too. There's a real moment here. It's this coming together of the right we've long forecast is now being brought to a head by Kemi Badenoch. It's not where Nigel Farage thought they would be. He's in Scotland now to unveil his new Scottish leader, Malcolm Offord. Instead, he's feeling questions about these two key figures coming together from the right. Let's not forget, Nigel Farage attacked Robert Jenrick as recently as last August over immigration. He's now today giving praise to Robert Jenrick for resigning over the Rwanda plan when it's watered down by Rishi Sunak. Extraordinary times here. This is the long-awaited coming together of the right being forced by the Tory leader. The next question, frankly, is what will Robert Jenrick do and what will Nigel Farage do? Stay tuned for an extraordinary day on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 15th of January. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Dawn Neeson. Major breaking news this lunchtime. Kemi Badenoch has sacked Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the Shadow Cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his Shadow Cabinet colleagues.
So was Robert Jenrick planning a dramatic defection to reform? In the last hour, Nigel Farage has said he has had conversations with Jenrick.
So there's a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr Jenrick's concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
Meanwhile, Labour have been quick to react, calling it another chapter of the Tory psychodrama.
And Reform's Zia Youssef takes aim at the Conservative Party leader, saying Kemi begins the brutal purge of those most likely to challenge her in the May post-electoral wipeout, telling Tory grandee James Cleverly to keep an eye on his phone.
Could this be the beginning of a huge wave of defections to reform?
Robert Jenrick is sacked by the Shadow Chief Whip. What will he do next? He refused to confirm the talks and then slammed the phone down. All eyes on him now. He's not picking up the phone this afternoon just yet.
Well, what an extraordinary day this has turned out to be. Of course, that breaking news from the last hour. The Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, has been sacked from the Conservative Party.
Indeed, absolutely. Seismic in the world of politics. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch said it comes after irrefutable evidence that he was plotting to defect.
Well, our very own political editor is in Westminster, plugged in to exactly what has gone on in the last few hours. Christopher Hope joins us now. Christopher, if you could spell out a timeline of what has happened, where are we now?
OK, so far we've only really heard from the Tory side, Tom and Dawn, but it looks like the Tory High Command, Kemi Badenoch and a top team, have got increasingly frustrated by what they see as attempts to undermine the party by Robert Jenrick. According to the Tories, Robert Jenrick had dinner last month with Nigel Farage. They then found, we are told in recent days, some incontrovertible evidence, some overwhelming evidence that Robert Jenrick was looking to defect to Reform UK at a moment to cause maximum damage to the party. That evidence was then handed to the team around Kemi Badenoch. There was a phone call this morning between Rebecca Smith, who is the the Shadow Chief Whip, the person in charge of running the party in Parliament. She then presented this evidence to Robert Jenrick. Jenrick then denied he was going to jump to Reform UK. He then slammed the phone down, according to Tory sources. And then we have this statement from Kemi Badenoch in which she says she's tired of all this messing around. She has sacked Robert Jenrick, not just sacked him from the party, which is what she can do. She's also suspended his membership as a Conservative. He is now party-less. He's now not in any party, either in the Commons or any members of any party. We don't know what Robert Jenrick says to this. He's not answering the phone when I rang him 10 minutes ago. His team are not answering the phone. They always do pick up normally. This is the coming together of elements of the right of politics. We thought this would happen at some point into the election. For me, it shows the authority of the person you're seeing on screen, Kemi Badenoch. Since the party conference, she's had a good few months, a good 10 to 12 weeks. She clearly feels now's the moment she can face down these critics on the right. Nigel Farage, for his part, in a press conference within the past hour, admits that he has spoken to Robert Jenrick in recent weeks, along with other Conservatives. He says he will now give a phone call to Robert Jenrick this afternoon, ask him for a drink and see what his plans are. I should say, that Nigel Farage is planning to give a press conference in London this afternoon. We think that's going to be on the delays to local elections in May. 21 Labour councils doing so, 3 Tories, 1 Lib Dem. But that now is being completely overshadowed by this long forecast coming together of senior figures on the right, precipitated by Kemi Badenoch, who is clearly, her tail is up. She's doing well personally in the polls, but the risk for her is she's still underwater in terms of the party. And will this cause a crisis? Will this cause other Tories to jump ship? I wonder whether they felt that Nadine Dorries going to the Reform Party on Monday meant let's just lance the boil and do this and get on with it. We may have clips now, I think maybe clips of what Nigel Farage said moments ago.
So there's a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr. Jenrick's concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
OK, that's what Nigel Farage said. He also said in later questioning he would give Robert Jenrick a ring, find out what his plans are and obviously offer him a home. Other parties are getting involved with this. We have Ed Davey saying the rats are leaving the sinking ship. Labour say it's all part of the Tory psychodrama. Here's how it all started about an hour or so ago, looking at the clock, from Kemi Badenoch in this dramatic, this history-making message on Twitter.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the shadow cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his shadow cabinet colleagues. It is my responsibility to protect our party, and faced with that information, I took the only decision that any responsible leader could. Because the British public are tired of political psychodrama. So am I. They saw too much of it in the last government, they're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes.
There you have it. That's Kemi Badenoch saying she's tired of this psychodrama. She's sitting down with our deputy political editor, Catherine Forster, within 2 hours. We'll get her response. And then, of course, that extraordinary press conference in London with Nigel Farage, when anything could happen. I do advise viewers and listeners to stay tuned. Here's what Sir Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, has been saying about what's going on in the Tory party this morning.
This is one more rat leaving a sinking ship. The Conservatives have run out of ideas and Reform only have bad ones. I think voters will see that it's been the Liberal Democrats holding the Labour government to account on things like water, with all those people in the South East water area with no water, with the corridor care crisis in A&E across our hospitals. So Liberal Democrats will continue to put forward our ideas and hold this government to account.
So, David, talking also about the water crisis in parts of Kent. One more rat is leaving a sinking ship, he said on social media. This is enlivened a rather quiet day in Westminster. Tom and Dawn.
Christopher, I mean, everyone's saying, oh, well, this was sort of par for the course. We were expecting this. The right has to unite and fight. But just months ago, both Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick were having a go at one another.
Yeah, that was over the debate about who did most on migration. Robert Jenrick got involved, went to see some protesters outside the Epping Hotel in Essex to talk to them why they're concerned about that hotel, of course, which were the demonstrations all through last August about the migrants being housed there. We saw language from Nigel Farage making clear that he didn't rate what Robert Jenrick did. He oversaw a huge number of people coming here legally. Nigel Farage said the so-called Boris Way was overseen by parts of Robert Jenrick's time as immigration minister, but the story changed this morning in this press conference in Scotland from Nigel Farage. He was giving praise to Robert Jenrick. He was saying to the effect he resigned with honour over the watering down of the Rwanda plan when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister. That certainly happened. Robert Jenrick did resign as immigration minister when he felt that plan had been watered down, but as the government had to almost cave in to pressure from lawyers and the courts, and that was too much for Robert Jenrick. So Nigel Farage is slightly having his cake and eating it. He likes part of Robert Jenrick's record, but not the other part.
One of the extraordinary things about Kemi Badenoch having forced this issue is how this upends what might have been a plan to have a sort of sequence of defections. Now, of course, we saw Nadeem Zahawi be a very high-profile defection last week. We saw a flurry of councillors, including one Green councillor, come across to the Reform Party. We've heard sort of hints towards the idea that there could be a Labour defector, a senior Labour defector. David Bull, the party chairman, said as much on GBNews days ago. And yet, Robert Jenrick coming across now does feed into this criticism that Reform has had, that they're becoming a sort of a repository for former Conservatives. I wonder if this timing doesn't particularly work to the Reform Party's favour as much as it would have done with the Big Bang surprise.
Well, Tom, you're right. I mean, Nigel Farage did deny in that press conference the claim made to him that you are now Tory Party 2.0. With Zahawi coming across, joining nearly 3 dozen, more than 3 dozen now, ex-Tories who lost their seats in 2024 to the Reform UK Party, there was a feeling growing that Kemi Badenoch could say, well, I'm the future in 2029. If you want to vote for the rejects from 2024, vote Reform UK. If that man on screen now, Robert Jenrick, seen there at the GBNews event when he went to battle with Kemi Badenoch, of course, back in November 2024. If that were to happen, he would be a significant signing. He would be by far and away the most experienced person, Reform UK MP, and I say that meaning even more experienced than Nigel Farage, because Robert Jenrick was a former Justice Secretary, he was a former local government secretary, he obviously is a senior player on the Tory shadow front bench. He would then become a possible rival in leadership terms to Nigel Farage. Is Nigel Farage ready for that? He hasn't given anyone else any senior jobs in his team apart from Richard Tice, who's the deputy leader, and their shadow chief whip, Lee Anderson. So it's a new power base coming to the party. And what Nigel Farage said earlier in that briefing, in that press conference, he doesn't want to import all the Tory psychodrama in the same way Kemi Badenoch feels she's ejecting that psychodrama from her party by removing that man on screen, Robert Jenrick. It is an extraordinary time here, and the question is, will he go to Reform UK? He's now politically homeless. There's nowhere else obvious for him to go. Or will he become, as you said earlier, Tom Harwood, will he become like Rupert Lowe, fighting his own agenda and almost only going across to Reform UK on his terms rather than on Nigel Farage's terms? It is extraordinary, this. It is unprecedented, and it's playing out live on GB News.
It certainly is. People will be looking at people around Robert Jenrick now. People like Neil O'Brien, for instance, close friends, were on the same campaign team at the Tory leadership contest. Of course, Danny Kruger was the first sort of crack in the wall. He moved across to the Reform Party. But before we dive into that, let's hear what the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, had to say.
My question is, why did it take so long? Jenrick's been making toxic comments to try and divide our country for months and months and months. And it's only now, when he's on the verge of defecting to Reform, that Badenoch gets round to sacking him. So that's weakness on her part. There's a bigger story here because we're seeing a flood of Tory politicians, ex-politicians, politicians going across to Reform because they know that the Tory party is a sinking ship. Equally, from Reform's point of view, you've got Nigel Farage, who is welcoming these failed politicians into his ranks and building his party as a party of the politicians, Tory politicians, who let the country down so badly. Meanwhile, this Labour government is taking on Grok, which is doing disgusting images of women and children.
OK, that was the Prime Minister on Robert Jenrick getting sacked by Kemi Badenoch. Christopher Hope, what did you make of what the Prime Minister's had to say?
Well, he would that, wouldn't he? I mean, I think this, to me, does demonstrate the authority which Kemi Badenoch now feels she has over her party. We knew, of course, that Robert Jenrick would have done a deal with Nigel Farage, and that was it toward nearer the time, maybe, and if became leader. We had been expecting letters to go in of no confidence into Kemi Badenoch. They were allowed to go in from November, but they haven't happened. And what she's done, the woman on screen there, the Tory leader, is she cemented her place with 3 big policy announcements at the party conference on stamp duty, ECHR and Acting on the Climate Change Act. That has supported her personally, but still corporately her party is below water, below the line in the polls when she became leader.
Well, Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed for that latest political analysis. Of course, we'll be back with you as the developments develop throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, covering it full, and we will bring you every coffin's bit of this huge political story for you. Now, friends of GBNews can vote in today's poll by scanning the QR code you can see on your screen or visiting gbnews.com/you decide. We're asking, was Kemi Badenoch right to sack Robert Jenrick? Get in touch, let us know, and we'll bring you the results very shortly.
Absolutely. Fascinated to see those. But in the meantime, let's speak to the former Conservative MP turned member of the Reform Party, Nadine Dorries. Nadine, thanks so much for being with us today. Did you see this coming?
Yes.
OK.
Clear and decisive. I'm stunned, actually, that a politician has answered so directly a question. No? It never happens.
OK, Nadine, are you happy that it has happened?
So what has happened is that Kemi Badenoch has sacked Robert Jenrick. I mean, it's bizarre, actually. She's acting a bit like a wife who's discovered that her husband is having an affair and she's thrown his clothes out onto the driveway. She's taken the least worst of all the worst options that were facing her. So I think what you're seeing, I think, Tom, you've just said, or maybe it was Chris, that, maybe she's playing to the new strength she feels in the party. I'm not sure that's the case. I think it's playing to a weakness. I think it shows that she's been scared about another defection. And, she really needs to be careful because Robert Jenrick may not be the only person talking to Reform. And I think really what she's probably tried to do is to send out a warning shot to others. If you're talking to Reform, this is what I'll do to you. I'm not sure how much ice that is going to cut, actually.
This is such an interesting day in politics because what we've seen in the last few weeks in the polls is that the Reform Party has slightly started to dip in some pollsters and the Conservative Party has slightly been coming up. Why do you think that this would happen now at this moment, and where do you see the polls going in the future?
So the increase in polls that you're alluding to with regard to the Conservative Party are between 0.5% and 1%, I believe, in some polls. And that's, as we know, well within a margin of error. What we see with Reform is a sustained poll lead over many months in all polls. And I think there's a bit of an excitement around what some people have described as the Badenoch bounce, the Kemi bounce. I don't believe it's there. If in 3 or 4, 5, 6 months' time, we see a solid improvement in the fortunes of the Conservative Party in terms of the polls, then I would buy that. But I'm afraid on the basis, you're talking about the basis of 3 weeks, whereas with Reform, you're talking about 18 months. I don't think you can compare the two. And also where Reform are, they're constantly bouncing up and down within that percentage in the polls, but they're constantly bouncing up and down, going upwards. And I've said this over and over again. We're facing the local elections in May. Nigel Farage has not even hit the campaign trail yet. When he does in a few weeks, you will see, I am very sure, the impact that will have both on the Reform Party polling, which will almost certainly go up, and you'll see the Conservative Party polling and Labour go down. So I just find this. I mean, I know it makes a good story. It's another angle that there's been this one or two polls that have shown a slight increase for Kemi Badenoch, but certainly not in any degree, I believe, that's worth hanging anything on just yet. I'd need to see a lot longer and her doing better for a lot longer first.
OK, Nadine, do you think Robert Jenrick will give the Reform Party a bounce, or will it have the opposite effect? There's a lot of criticism recently of ex-Tory big beasts joining Reform and, you know, accepting sloppy seconds, if you like. Do you think Robert Jenrick would be good for the party?
Well, I was the first former cabinet minister to defect to Reform, so I take particular exception to the sloppy seconds comment. I know, you know, it's Nigel Farage is a very, I mean, I'm sure he's talking about this loads on GBNews. He's very sanguine and practical about what it is that Reform need to do. And he understands completely that to go into a general election and to win a general election, for him to go in without anybody having any cabinet experience or departmental experience would be very tricky for him indeed, certainly for the first year. So he knows that he needs some former cabinet Whitehall experience. And I think that, you know, Robert Jenrick has both Nadine, myself, and Nadine and I both actually were sworn into Privy Council on the same day. We both served, I think, in the same number of ministerial jobs and in cabinet. And Robert has, I believe. So I think what Nigel now has behind him, if Robert does defect to Reform, is the cabinet, and he's got, Danny Kruger wasn't in cabinet, but he has some experience of working inside Number 10. I think what Nigel probably has now is people who do understand the system and do understand how it works. But, you know, I also say this as well, that Nigel is also very clear, as Reform are very clear, that not everybody from the Conservative Party is welcome in Reform. And I would say that Robert Jenrick is one of the few right-wing Conservative, or former, now he's had the whip removed, Conservative MPs in the Conservative Party. You could count them on one hand. There is himself, Neil O'Brien. There are a few who I would say are right-wing. The rest could almost call themselves Liberal Democrats. And so if Robert does come over to Reform, he's now not a Conservative member of the Conservative Party, what you're being left with increasingly in the Conservative Party is a left-wing rump. And how well that's going to play out during the local and a general election, I'm not sure.
Nadine, do you think this could be the beginning of the end for the Conservative Party?
I said that the day I defected to Reform. The Conservative Party is dead. It's no longer ever going to be, certainly in my lifetime, a party of government. You know, if you look at the way the votes of the nation are moving, those who are still supporting the Conservative Party and Reform, and the diminishing number who are supporting the Labour Party, the votes of the nation are moving to the right. So the battle in the future is between the right and left once again. I don't see any improvement in Labour's fortunes. I see Labour only going down one road, and I see the Conservatives not very far behind them. When you see the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party polling in some polls more than the Conservative Party, I think it's pretty obvious. The Conservative Party are not going to be a party of government again. I've also said that their main... I personally, if we were faced with a general election and it could be a Labour government, if there isn't some accommodation between the Conservative Party and Reform, I would be someone who would be persuading Nigel to find an accommodation, because I think another Labour government would be the end of this country.
Well, that is a very, very interesting point of view. Do you think as more Conservatives join the Reform Party, that voice will become louder within the Reform Party? Because there are some Reform senior figures who say they wouldn't be seen dead doing a deal with the Conservative Party. But perhaps your point of view is growing as the defections continue to rise.
Well, the people who are saying that are former Conservatives themselves. So there is this interesting situation within my party, Reform, and I find this one slightly difficult to comprehend sometimes, but I understand. But equally, it's also very understandable. But the people in Reform were former Conservatives, and I think they are coming to realise that whereas Reform was the right party for them as former Conservative Party members, it's also the right party for others to join. Now, there is a limit. I do understand. Since my defection, I've been contacted by a number of Conservative MPs and former Conservative MPs who said to me, could you have a word with Nigel for me? I absolutely know there's no way on this planet Nigel would tolerate them. Not least because of the way they voted on certain things in the past, because of things that they've done, that they've shown a lack of loyalty to leadership. There are many reasons why they would not be welcome within the Reform Party. So those people in Reform who may not be that close to Nigel or know Reform's thinking at the top need to understand Reform is not a depository for every former Conservative politician who wants to join Reform. It certainly isn't. Reform has a very defined set of principles. It knows where it's going. It knows what it stands for. For those Conservative MPs who served their time with the Conservative Party, who would vote whichever way suited them at the time, who voted the best way to keep their job, who don't really have any fundamental Conservative principles running through their veins, Reform is not going to be the place for you. So I wouldn't even bother trying.
And Nadine, just quickly and finally, thank you so much for talking to us. It's been brilliant having your point of view and perspective on this one. You're talking about loyalty and being able to trust people in politics. It's only a few months ago that Nigel Farage branded Robert Jenrick a fraud, and Robert Jenrick declared that his ambition was to get Nigel back into retirement.
Look, that's the day-to-day play of politics, and you know that as well as anybody. So, when you're fighting for your party to have a political advantage over another party, well, then you're going to say and do things that you have to do. I've always managed to skirt around that. I've never actually, when I was culture secretary, managed to avoid doing that. But sometimes you just have to be out there and do that. And I don't put any. I was very fortunate. I don't think I've ever said a bad word about Nigel, and I don't think he's ever said one about me. He may have done once, I think. But again, for me that was fine. That was part of the political fray, and those things are usually said when you're arguing about a policy or a principle. So I don't know when Robert made those comments, but I imagine it was to do with a policy announcement or a principle that was being discussed or something Labour were introducing at the time. None of them are rooted in personal. I hope most politicians can separate the man and the ball, or the woman and the ball, as it were.
Well, Nadine Dorries, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Thanks indeed for being with us here live on GB News on this absolutely astonishing news day.
Certainly a seismic political news for you now. So let's go live to Westminster, where GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley has just left a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesperson. Olivia.
Yes, so we got an update from the Prime Minister's spokesman on what's happened with this astonishing defection from, well, not quite a defection yet, but Robert Jenrick being sacked from the Conservative Party by Kemi Badenoch. As you might expect, the Prime Minister's political spokesman was sounding quite gleeful about this news. She said that it was... shows how weak Kemi Badenoch is, that she could only sack Robert Jenrick on his way out. She then suggested that it doesn't matter which rosettes these failed ministers put on, these are the people who the country roundly rejected. She said that Robert Jenrick's government presided over an open border experiment, while this Labour government is trying to get things right. She pointed to the evidence that they are making progress with NHS waiting lists a little bit down, the economy beginning to go up. That is the line from the Prime Minister's spokesman. But of course, there are those within Labour who are very worried that a Reform Party with Robert Jenrick in it is more of a threat to Labour. At the moment, Keir Starmer's line on the Conservatives and the Reform Party is that the Conservative Party are basically a decent party who he disagrees with, whereas Reform are, I'm paraphrasing here, but, a bunch of mavericks who shouldn't be given the time of day. When someone like Robert Jenrick, who is a respected politician with a long history, unlike some of the recent defections of people who lost their seats at the last election, that gives some gravitas to reform. And whatever spin that Labour is putting on it today, I think there will be those on the Labour benches who are worried that Reform, who of course are now the biggest threat to Labour in the polls, Reform are doing extremely well, and it's thought that they will knock Labour out of councils all over England at those elections in May. Reform is definitely more of a threat, whether they'll say it or not, to Labour with Robert Jenrick in it than without him.
Olivia, while you were in the briefing with the other journalists, what was the atmosphere like? Were people shocked? Were they sort of confused about what was going? Just paint us a little picture of what it was like in that briefing.
Well, as it was the Prime Minister's spokesman, most of the conversation in that briefing was actually about other issues. Only at the end did the Prime Minister's political spokesman, who's able to answer these questions about the politicking of Westminster, come in. And at that point, there was a barrage of questions at her. Journalists were surprised. It has taken Westminster by shock. I mean, that said, as Andrew, Miriam and I all know, there have been these rumours for a long time now about Robert Jenrick defecting to Reform. I spoke to someone very senior at Reform a few weeks ago who said that Robert Jenrick was about to defect. I think quite a lot of us took it with a bit of a pinch of salt because, of course, Reform would want to say that. They want to look as though they are a party on the up. Nigel Farage, of course, is maintaining that he was not about to unveil a Robert Jenrick defection this afternoon, and he suggests Kemi Badenoch may have added 2 and 2 up and made 5. But let's see how this pans out throughout the day. Westminster journalists are completely fascinated by it, of course, and are very much looking forward to hearing from the man himself, Robert Jenrick, at some point soon.
And Olivia, before we let you go, there is a Reform press conference planned for later today. We understand this press conference was planned to be about the cancelled elections in many different local authorities. I mean, this could be a hastily repurposed press conference later today. Might we see Robert Jenrick and hear from him? Because, of course, we haven't heard from him yet.
We haven't heard from him yet. I think he will have to speak soon in some form, because at the moment it does feel as though Kemi Badenoch has rather stolen his thunder. And as for the language she used, talking about secret plotting, talking about people being sick of political psychodrama, that's not going to go down well with Robert Jenrick. If he was preparing a big defection speech now, and Kemi Badenoch has taken the wind out of his sails, while at the same time suggesting that he's the sort of sly politicking figure of the kind which, as she suggests, the voters are probably tired of. So if Robert Jenrick wants to keep that political momentum behind him, which he's done so well actually at building up over the past year or so since he lost that Conservative Party leadership election, then I think we will have to hear from him quite soon.
Interesting, isn't it? Thank you very much, political correspondent Olivia Utley there. I've just come from the briefing with the Prime Minister's office. You know, what is absolutely fascinating about this, by trying to avoid a psychodrama, you've got one of the biggest psychodramas in politics for decades. Quite astonishing today.
Really, really astonishing stuff. Shall we get the view of someone from within the Jenrick world? Because the Conservative councillor and deputy editor of The Critic magazine, who campaigned for Jenrick to become leader, Tom Jones, can join us now. Tom, thanks for being here. Jenrick is your sort of Conservative. This must be a personal blow to you.
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's no way to hide that. Obviously, I hoped Jenrick had won the last leadership contest, and the great thing about lost causes is that you're always right, because you never know the counterfactual. I think we would have been doing a lot better with Robert as leader. I don't think we would be down in 20%. I don't think we would be in danger of being swamped by the Greens and the Lib Dems. But of course, I can be right because I can't be proved wrong.
Tom, what do you think has made Jenrick make this decision? I mean, it's not confirmed yet that he is defecting to Reform, but I mean, it's pretty much nailed on. I think we will be hearing something later on today. But what do you think has made him jump this way?
Well, very simple. It's the circumstances of Kemi's leadership. So Kemi has benefited a great deal from a great deal of positive, really positive.
Oh, I think we might have just lost Yeah, I think we have
Oh,
lost
that's a
Tom
shame.
Jones there, which is a big shame, because there is a very serious point here. There are two different competing narratives. Did Robert Jenrick defect because Kemi Badenoch is a weak and useless leader of the Conservative Party, or did Robert Jenrick defect because actually she's becoming a lot stronger and therefore he sees his own personal fortunes within the Conservative Party as dimming as Kemi's star brightens?
Because he was obviously the challenge for the leadership campaign back in 2024. What do you think, Tom? I mean, you've covered politics for a long time. What's your gut reaction?
I think this move would not have happened if it looked like Kemi Badenoch was on the brink of being kicked out as leader of the Conservative Party. If Kemi Badenoch had had a very bad few weeks, I think Robert Jenrick would still be a member of the Conservative Party today. Let's not forget, he is publicly on the record as having campaigned to be leader of the Conservative Party.
Of course.
He wanted to be leader of the Conservative Party. Him not being able to be leader of the Conservative Party and that prospect looking like it's a narrowing prospect might well have informed his decision.
Which is why I'm interested to hear from you all out there, gbnews.com/your say, obviously. Because how does this make you feel about loyalty and trust in politics? As Tom, you've just alluded to, if he'd have seen a main chance for him to lead the Conservative Party, he would probably still be there. So this is less about the voters, immigration, the way the country's going, and more about Robert Jenrick's career.
That all being said, Robert Jenrick has painted his colours to the mast.
Oh, yeah.
He has stuck steadfastly to his principles. He has, in some ways, been actually to the right of the Reform Party on issues like migration, like asylum, and in some ways much more sort of in line with the Rupert Lowe view of the world. And so this does become, I think, like all decisions, it's not going to be one thing or another. Would this have happened without Kemi Badenoch's relative strengthening position within her own party? Probably not. But that doesn't mean that is why it happened. That doesn't mean that could be the straw on the camel's back, but ultimately Robert Jenrick has a particular view of the world, a particular view of how he believes the country should be run, and perhaps he doesn't have faith in the Conservative Party leadership to deliver that.
And he has become more right-wing in his opinions, and some of the interviews he's given recently, the rhetoric he was using the other week, some would say was blatantly racist. I can't remember what the actual story it was now it was talking about, but he has become progressively more right-wing in his views.
There was a controversy around Robert Jenrick at the time of the Conservative Party conference when he spoke about the changing face of some of the areas of this country. And yet, Kemi Badenoch did back Robert Jenrick there. I think some polling showed that he was speaking for a fairly silent majority of the country in terms of how people feel uneasy about the scale and the pace of change that we're seeing in so many communities up and down the country. But it is right to say that Robert Jenrick had a different view when he was first elected in a by-election in Newark in 2014. He was seen as a much more centrist Conservative more than a decade ago. He was one of the sort of he was the first millennial to join the cabinet. He was a sort of young Cameron-adjacent Conservative, but he says himself that his time in the Home Office as immigration minister radicalised him. That seeing the dysfunction of the asylum system, seeing the dysfunction of the immigration system, seeing how the Home Office operates as a broken department, changed his view on some of these issues.
Interestingly, he was also opposed to Brexit as well.
He was.
So it'll be very interesting to see how that dynamic plays out if he does join Reform.
But this was fascinating because in the Conservative leadership election in 2024, Robert Jenrick was backed mainly by people who were in favour of leaving the European Union, while Kemi Badenoch was backed by the Conservatives who originally were more on the Remain side. When Kemi voted Leave and Jenrick voted Remain, it's a bit like how Liz Truss voted Remain and Rishi Sunak voted Leave, but their supporters came from the opposite camps.
Very interesting times. We can, I think, now go back to Tom Jones, who's Deputy Editor of The Critic and Jenrick leader campaigner. Tom, are you back with us?
Yeah, sorry about earlier.
Marvellous. OK, Tom, you were about to explain why you think that Robert Jenrick has made this move now. What pushed him in this direction?
Yeah, so as I was saying, you know, Kemi's position is more secure than it's ever been. Since conference, she's had a lot of positive press coverage. her personal ratings as the next Prime Minister have really, really surged. They're about where Keir Starmer's are now, actually. And it has had absolutely no discernible impact on the wider Conservative electoral position whatsoever. We're still at 20%, Reform is still at 30%. Anyone of note or ambition, I think, will see the disparate effects as they are, which is that a strong Kemi basically means nothing for your re-election chances or for the chances of another Conservative government.
There were some polls back in September before the Conservative Party conference over the summer that put the Conservatives down at 16 or 15% in the polls. There was a 15% from a Find Out Now poll in August. There was a 15% again from a Find Out Now poll. There was a 14% poll rating for the Conservatives from Ipsos in September. I mean, 14% is an astonishingly low number. You're completely right to say 20% is not high-flying. It really, really is not. But there has been a recovery. We are no longer seeing 15%, 16% ratings for the Conservative Party.
No, that's true. But in the material interests of Conservative MPs, I mean, it makes no difference whether it's 14 or 20%. In that situation, Robert Jenrick would be losing his seat because he is a Conservative, and there will be scores of other Conservative MPs who will be in exactly the same position. The difference in terms of seats between 14 and 20% is. It is a difference in terms of seats, but it still would, either result would relegate the Conservative Party to essentially a kind of regional party at best, or super-regional party. So I think basically Jenrick is kind of jumping before he was pushed, but pushed by the electorate, really. And now he's been pushed by Kemi instead.
Tom, just one breaking line on this story, which I'm finding quite hard to believe, given that Robert Jenrick isn't stupid, is that this all came to light when he left a resignation letter lying around. Does that sound like the Robert Jenrick you know?
Not really. That's the bit of this I find the most incredible. I mean, I'm only 32, so I don't print anything off. But if that's true, I mean, that is a really serious misstep. Robert Jenrick, during the leadership election and, in fact, as Shadow Justice Secretary, has been known for running a really, really, really slick operation. I think it's really unusual that actually we're having this level of coverage for a Shadow Justice Secretary, because if you think about the previous Labour government, I bet even most of your viewers who are politically switched on, who consume politics a great deal more than the average person, I bet most of them couldn't name the Shadow Justice Secretary for Labour. I'm pretty sure I couldn't. And so he's run a really slick operation. It's really professional. And I think this is very unusual and very out of character.
I'm now trying to. Under Corbyn, it was Shami Chakrabarti for a time, but I don't know who it was when it was. When it was
Tom
Starmer.
Jones, well done for getting Tom Harwood stumped. I do like that attitude. How is this going to go down, though, do you think, Tom, with Reform voters? So, as we've been discussing, Robert Jenrick has been moving more to the right, more in alliance with Reform's policies. But we do hear from Reform voters a lot that they are unhappy that so many ex-Conservatives or Conservatives, not ex-Conservatives, Conservatives are joining the Reform Party. Do you think this is going to be damaging for Reform, or will they get a Robert Jenrick bounce?
I mean, obviously, I think they'll get a Robert Jenrick bounce, but I would say that, wouldn't I? I think basically this puts Reform in exactly the same position they've been with all their other defections, which is that they have to balance out the perception that they are a retirement home or a last chance saloon for Tories against actually what that Tory is going to bring in terms of professional networks, kind of structural additions to the party for the Reform Party. I think one of the interesting things about this is, obviously, I'm in a lot of Tory WhatsApp groups, and this has gone completely without note. Actually, in most of my Reform groups, they're silent as the grave. I suppose you can say at this point to a Tory, what's one more defection?
Tom, I do find that hard to believe, that the WhatsApp groups are not saying anything.
No, absolutely nothing.
Wow.
It's been silent as the grave. I think with the rumours around Robert possibly defecting anyway, the kind of the people who have previously gone, I'm thinking of Danny Kruger, who was his campaign manager. I think there has been some expectation amongst the remaining ranks of the Tory party that Rob is probably going to go anyway. I think this actually illustrates one of the problems that the Conservatives are having, which has really gone unremarked, and actually I think is a big driving factor in a lot of these decisions, which is that, you know, Reform now offers a more right-wing alternative to Conservative members than the Conservative Party itself. And so a lot of the people who might have been shaking the tree because they're unhappy with Kemi's leadership, they're not shaking the tree anymore because there's an alternative and they've already gone. So the removal of people like Robert Jenrick is both a symptom and a cause of a Conservative Party that is basically losing its right-wing vitality to Reform.
And yet, if you were to look at the Conservative policy platform on withdrawal from the ECHR, on scrapping the Climate Change Act, I mean, on introducing an ICE-style borders plan, crackdown to kick out illegal migrants. I mean, this is Robert Jenrick's policy agenda that was basically adopted wholesale at the Conservative Party conference last year. Parking that aside, Tom, I want to ask you, you know the Jenrick campaign operation, you know how it sort of continued to go on after the leadership election itself was over, how he kept offices, had staff, but also people around Jenrick in Parliament. I'm thinking of some very high-quality, high-performing Conservative MPs, people like Neil O'Brien. Do you think that they could be following? Because Robert Jenrick comes with a whole bunch of infrastructure.
Yeah, I actually think it's more than possible. Just on your earlier point about the Tory party kind of going more towards a Jenrick platform, the problem with that is, as Imelda Marcos once said, perception is real and reality is not. You know, the Tory party are seen as institutionally left-wing, and that has become the way that the voters see them. But going back to your question about MPs going, yes, I think there is a more significant potential. I think Danny Kruger, as an early defection, was something of an outlier. What we've seen since then are people like your previous guest, Nadine Dorries, a lot of the 2019 Boris Johnson type intake. Robert Jenrick is a slightly different profile. As you say, he has a really professional setup. He has a lot of allies in Parliament. I understand there have been some kind of minor fallings out within that grouping, but it's still pretty strong. Whether he takes people like Neil O'Brien, I think is open to discussion because they now have been brought into the Kemi fold. I think had Kemi not brought those people in, Robert Jenrick could probably take 10 people with him tomorrow, but a lot of those people have now got jobs within the Conservative Party, which is less perhaps about Kemi bringing them in order to be nice and cuddly towards her defeated foes, and more actually that, you know, the Conservative Party are choosing from a pretty shallow pool of MPs, frankly.
Really, really important there for you to make this sort of distinction. I mean, there are Tories and then there are Tories. There are the Boris-adjacent Tories, people like Nadine Dorries, Marco Longhi, Dame Andrea Jenkins, Jake Berry to some extent. Sort of these Reform defectors are very much Boris world, were big Boris backers. Jenrick is not really of that fold. He sort of sits in a very different part of the Conservative Party, a fascinating distinction there between these different defectors. But Tom Jones, deputy editor at The Critic magazine, do stay with us. We're just going to head over to a fascinating result of our poll.
We are indeed, which is reflecting exactly what you're saying on the Have Your Say as well. Friends of GB News can vote in today's poll by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting gbnews.com/you decide. We're asking, was Kemi Badenoch right to sack Robert Jenrick? Currently, it's pretty neck and neck, with 46% saying yes and 54% saying no.
I mean,
this is almost like a referendum.
This is practically a photo finish for a GB News poll. I mean, most of our polls are are 98-2.
Yeah.
So even though it is like quite a significant gap, this is a very, very close one for one of ours.
This is echoed exactly by what you're saying on Your Say. Tilly says, excellent news. If Robert Jenrick joins Reform, we will have a bounce. Meanwhile, Chris says, Reform can no longer call themselves a party of change, end of. So divided between you all out there as well. Absolutely fascinating. gbnews.com/your say to have your say, and on screen you can see how to get involved in that vote as well.
Absolutely. But let's return now to Tom Jones, because let's talk about this particular division. There are some Conservative MPs who... a lot of people might raise an eyebrow. I mean, Nadine Dorries, we were speaking to her earlier, she was the architect of the Online Safety Act, which now the Reform Party campaigns very fervently against. I'm not quite sure how she squares that circle. See the fit there, and yet much easier, strangely, to see the ideological fit with Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. At the time when Nadine, with all due respect to her, defected, I think I wrote a piece saying that this was a very, very bizarre get, basically. And I think at that point, Reform were almost in the position of kind of taking who they could get, because people thought the Reform polling lead was just a short-term thing. We're no longer in that position. We no longer inhabit that world. You know, Reform have been leading in the polls by a good 5 to 10% for over a year. So I think they're seen as much more of a long-term prospect, and that has brought people outside of basically a I don't want to say Boris continuity, but a 2019 continuity. It's spread themselves out from those candidates. And obviously somebody like Jenrick very much speaks to that.
Now, one of the other things that people will be looking at, of course, is what's going to happen later this afternoon. I mean, if you were in the mind of Robert Jenrick, do you think he should be speaking more? Because at the moment, this radio silence surely can't be good for Robert Jenrick. It's other people who are telling his story.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I mean, Chopper was on earlier saying that it's been radio silence from Jenrick's team. I think they're trying to process the story themselves. Obviously, I mean, it's almost nailed on, I think, that that Robert will go to Reform now, and I think probably what they're focused on is making that happen, so that his next speaking occasion is probably going to be in Westminster with Nigel Farage this afternoon, announcing his defection. But I think one of the interesting second-order consequences of this is that this leaves Kemi Badenoch basically with no clear rival at all. She will now lead the party into the next general election, I think, and that's not something really that we're touching on. She is now absolutely nailed on as Tory leader. She has an alternative in James Cleverly, but James Cleverly has been very quiet, actually, since coming third in the leadership race. So I think basically Kemi has got rid of the main leadership rival, and I think probably the next thing we will hear from Robert is seeing him next to Nigel Farage.
Very quickly and finally, because you do know Jenrick so very well, Robert Jenrick is a huge personality, is very good at organising stunts, is very good at getting the publicity the party, whatever party it is, needs. How is that going to work with Nigel Farage, who's similar personality type? Can you see them getting on and running a party together, working together?
I can see Robert working with Nigel Farage, but I can't see them running a party together. I think Nigel Farage likes to keep control of his parties. They are very much, they're not one-man band anymore. I don't think that allegation is now true of Reform, but they clearly have a couple of leading lights. I think Robert Jenrick will have to accept a subordinate role to Nigel Farage, but it's possible that actually that might work for Robert Jenrick, because in the Conservative Party, you know, the kind of activity that Robert was doing around campaigning was construed as basically a continuation of the leadership race. And, you know, with all due respect, I think in some ways that was true. But because of the way Reform is structured, That's not going to happen. You are not going to overthrow Nigel Farage with a few campaign videos, as good as they were, about fare evaders on the tube. So actually, I think because of the way reform is structured, yes, I can see them working together really quite well.
Well, watch this space.
Indeed.
Tom Jones, Deputy Editor of The Critic magazine. Thanks
you.
indeed for joining us.
OK, thank you very much. Well, you are joining us on a seismic day for British politics. Kemi Badenoch has sacked Robert Jenrick, as it looked like he was on the verge of joining reform, although Nigel Farage has denied that that was going to happen. But it now seems pretty nailed on, and evidently he left a resignation letter carelessly lying around.
Which is shocking, really, because he's not a careless person by reputation.
Doesn't sound like something Robert Jenrick would do.
And yet, what we have had is this news sprung upon Nigel Farage in the middle of a press conference in Scotland earlier today, this morning. This afternoon, Reform had a planned press conference in Westminster in London featuring Nigel Farage. He must be somewhere mid-air by now, hurtling down to London, I'm sure, trying to get into contact with Mr Jenrick. But this afternoon, we could be seeing, finally, what Robert Jenrick actually has to say. There's been a lot of stuff said about Robert Jenrick, but nothing by Robert Jenrick.
And it does seem, sources are saying now that it does seem that Robert Jenrick will be making some kind of announcement this afternoon. So he's not the kind of politician to take a backseat and let others speak for him. So it does seem like he will be making some kind of announcement, possibly with Nigel Farage, who is, as you just said, hot-footing it down from Scotland as we speak. And we will be covering all of that live here on GB News for you.
Absolutely. This is a developing story throughout this afternoon. Robert Jenrick, currently an independent member of Parliament.
Yes.
But what could happen next?
OK, now let's speak to Liberal Democrat MP Edward Morello. Edward, good to see you. Thank you so much. Well, we keep saying seismic, an overused word, but, I mean, this really is a huge day for British politics. What do you make of where we are so far?
I don't know that I do think it's a huge day for British politics. It feels like a bit of a continuation of Tory chaos that we've had for nigh on years now. It just, we saw the collapse of the Tory party towards the end of the year with numerous prime ministers and backstabbings and infighting, and it feels like we've just sort of rolled that back over into 2025 and now 2026.
And yet, for the Liberal Democrats, surely that this might be somewhat of a worrying sign. Robert Jenrick thinks the Conservative Party is too Liberal Democrat for him, and he's moving across to Reform in all likelihood. Does that mean that the Conservative Party is more of a challenger to the Liberal Democrats in the 72 seats you hold?
I would say quite the opposite. I mean, at the going rate of defections from the Conservative Party to Reform, there's a very good chance that Ed Davey may be the leader of the opposition before the end of this Parliament.
And yet you say this steady stream of Conservatives going to Reform. Doesn't that leave a Conservative Party that is more in the centre ground, that is perhaps a greater worry for you?
I wouldn't say that that's an accurate depiction at all. Quite the opposite. I think the ease at which MPs can, both current ones and former ones, seem to be able to move between the two parties suggests to me that the electorate are recognising there's very little difference between those two parties. And if they want a real opposition or they want a true Liberal voice in Parliament, Liberal Democrats are the only party representing their values.
Sorry, Edward, I'm just going to pick you up on that. There's not movement the other direction. You're saying moving between these two parties. I mean, there's one-way movement and has been one-way movement. Traditionally, people defect from a party when they feel that party doesn't match what they believe. They don't defect from a party because it agrees with them. I don't think I follow the logic of what you're saying.
Well, I think the Conservative Party has always moved around the political spectrum. At the moment, it is certainly to the right of the political spectrum, leaving the middle ground wide open to the Liberal Democrats, which is where we've always been and will continue to espouse Liberal voices. And quite frankly, if the Conservative Party and Reform want to fight over who is the most right-wing MP and who should join which party, that's their internal party fights to have. The Liberal Democrats will carry on doing what we have been doing in this Parliament, which is being the voice for liberal values, the voice for common sense, and for the voice of those who want an actual opposition to what this government is doing.
Edward, the Liberal Democrats have wasted no time in mocking Robert Jenrick up as a traitor, you know, based on the TV show, obviously. Do you think that's a sensible grown-up attitude to take?
The Liberal Democrat media and social media team are absolutely exceptional at making sure that we put forward the Liberal case and, where necessary, skewer the opposition parties for the histrionics that they seem to be going through.
Well, it is always entertaining to see what the press teams of the parties make of this. But on a serious note, this is one of Parliament's most active performers we're talking about, someone who has pushed the Justice Secretary into several U-turns, whether that's on the Sentencing Council or in several other different directions. This has been a very active member of Parliament. Will this make reform a bigger presence in the House of Commons?
Well, I mean, they'd have to start turning up for debates if they wanted to be a bigger presence in Parliament. But to your broader point, I think that, yes, look, you know, any party as it increases in size has to start dealing with the internal political dynamics that having numerous big beasts and differing voices has, whether or not reform can mature as a political party to the state that they can deal with having more than one face to the party will remain to be seen. But to be honest, it's not really a distraction for the Liberal Democrats. The current Reform Party hasn't been. We will just carry on doing what we've always been doing, which is being a reasonable and constructive opposition to the Labour government.
OK, Edward, thank you very much. That's Liberal Democrat MP Edward Morello there. Thank you very much. Who have Lib Dems have compared Robert Jenrick to a traitor from the TV show.
Well, I think that Kemi Badenoch might quite agree.
Probably would.
Now, there is much more to come, of course, this afternoon. Do stay with us here on GB News. This is Good Afternoon Britain, covering continued coverage of this astonishing political defection.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 15th of January. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
And major breaking news this lunchtime. Kemi Badenoch has sacked Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the Shadow Cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his Shadow Cabinet colleagues.
So was Robert Jenrick planning this dramatic defection, and just how dramatic might it have been? Well, in the last hour, Nigel Farage has said he has had conversations with the Shadow Justice Secretary.
So there's a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr Jenrick is concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
And Labour have been quick to react, calling it another chapter of the Tory psychodrama.
Meanwhile, Reform's Zia Youssef takes aim at the Conservative leader, saying Kemi begins the brutal purge of those most likely to challenge her in May, post the electoral wipeout. So could this be the beginning of a huge wave of defections to Reform?
Westminster in turmoil. Kemi Badenoch fires Robert Jenrick for disloyalty. Will he now join Reform UK? We might find out live on GB News in the next few hours.
Well, thank you so much for your company today. Huge political story breaking for you. Kemi Badenoch has sacked Robert Jenrick after fears, it's not confirmed yet, that he was defecting to join Reform.
Now, what do you make of this story? Well, friends of GB News can vote in today's poll by scanning the QR code on screen or visiting gbnews.com/you decide. We're asking this: was Kemi Badenoch right to sack Robert Jenrick?
Currently, it's pretty neck and neck, which is unusual for our polls, it has to be said, with 46% saying yes, she was right to sack him, and 54% saying no.
So the way for you to have your say is to scan that little QR code there down by Dawn's elbow.
I'm not going to point at it. I'm rubbish at pointing that. Whatever, Elbow, it's on the screen there. Go and have your say, because very, very curious to see what you're saying. And gbnews.com/your say to put your comments on the chat as well, the group chat. It's an interesting result so far, Tom. Literally half and half. Half are welcoming the fact that Robert Jenrick may, we don't know for sure yet, be going to reform. Others saying, no, we don't want any more ex-Conservatives.
It's a sizable chunk for yes, although if you wanted to spin it the other way, you could say that's a healthy 12% lead for. Oh no, sorry, an 8% lead for no. It's shifted in the last few minutes. Yes has grown in the last few minutes.
I think we're actually going to end up with like a reform, a referendum level of break when it was like that close.
52-48.
Yeah, and everyone's going, well, we don't know. Let's have another one.
It's the perennial percentage that haunts British politics. Never has since June 2016. Yeah. But let's talk to our political editor, Christopher Hope, now, because Christopher, we are expecting some sort of movement this afternoon. There was a press conference planned by Reform.
Yes, as far as we know, that's still going to happen. We are now expecting around now or next couple of hours Nigel Farage to speak to Robert Jenrick. He said in that press conference in Fife about an hour or so ago he would give him a ring. They admitted he'd been in touch with him in recent weeks. It's worth noting the timeline here. According to the Tory party, again, no one from the team around Jenrick or the man himself is picking up the phone to me, so we're relying on Tory sources for this. But according to the Conservatives, there was a dinner took place between Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick last month. Then after that, there was chatter around will he go to Reform UK. We are now told that the team around Kevin Badenoch found what they say is evidence that was overwhelming that he wanted to defect to Reform UK to cause maximum damage. That led to a phone call this morning between Rebecca Smith, who is the shadow chief whip for the Tory party. In that phone call, we are told by the Tories, Robert Jenrick denied wanting to jump to Reform UK. He then, in quotes, slammed the phone down on Rebecca Smith, and that led to this statement on Twitter from Kemi Badenoch.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the shadow cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his shadow cabinet colleagues. It is my responsibility to protect our party, and faced with that information, I took the only decision that any responsible leader could. Because the British public are tired of political psychodrama. So am I. They saw too much of it in the last government, they're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes.
Now, that's one of the most dramatic messages on X I have seen in politics for a while. That led to difficult questions for Nigel Farage, who was doing a press conference at the same time up in Fife. Here's what he said about his view on this dramatic news.
So there's a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr Jenrick's concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
Now, Nigel Farage was on the back foot there. He wasn't aware of the news before it broke. He normally does say that he talked to Tories all the time. He's been saying that since his days running UKIP in the early part of the last decade. He then went on to say in further questioning he would be giving Robert Jenrick a phone call saying, what are your plans? Because now Robert Jenrick is out of the Tory party as an MP and as a member. He is stateless. He is not in a party at all. Completely dramatic. Other parties have been piling in. Labour Party says it's part of the psychodrama of the Tory party. And here's what Ed Davey had to say. He's the leader, of course, of the Lib Dems.
This is one more rat leaving a sinking ship. The Conservatives have run out of ideas and Reform only have bad ones. I think voters will see that it's been the Liberal Democrats holding the Labour government to account on things like water, with all those people in the South East water area with no water, with the corridor care crisis in A&E across our hospitals. So Liberal Democrats will continue to put forward our ideas and hold this government to account.
So Davey there, using a conversation about water shortages in Kent to attack, of course, Reform and the Tory party. This has created a ferment in Westminster in Parliament. Most MPs have gone away for their weekend break, but this is not expected in short order. It says two things to me. It says the clarity that Kemi Badenoch is feeling as leader. She feels strong after 3 months of being leader, having those policies announced in the Tory party conference. And also question marks now for Nigel Farage. Does he want to bring in a genuine big beast on as an MP that'll be a rival leadership to him in the party? What are the terms that Robert Jenrick may try and extract in that phone call in coming hours? And there's a press conference live on GBNews. We're expecting around 4:30. That could be dramatic. I wouldn't go anywhere. I would get in the popcorn.
Popcorn very definitely being ordered here. Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. And possibly a large glass of red wine. That's what I think Mr Farage would be doing.
Even in January.
The question, dry January, I think, can go and do one, mostly the way we're going so far this year.
It's very, if I were to think of one politician who's definitely not doing dry January, it is Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage, yeah, absolutely. Now, the question here, Tom, is what happens next? I mean, Robert Jenrick now is, as Nigel, as our Christopher Hope has just said, stateless. He doesn't have a party. So he doesn't have any options aside from joining Reform.
This puts him in a weaker position. If we're to believe what Camilla Tommely was reporting over the weekend, which I always do because she's a brilliant journalist and colleague, and she foresaw this. She said that there are talks going on between Jenrick and Reform and that he wants to be Reform's shadow chancellor. Well, perhaps that was true. And if you're saying, well, I could defect you, but if I defect you, you've got to give me a big job. Great. He could say that if he's a Conservative MP. Now he's an independent MP. What leverage does he have?
Exactly. And what does that mean for Richard Tice and Zia Youssef and all the other big beasts already in the Reform Party?
Interestingly, I saw Richard Tice, I think he's only put out one tweet today.
Yes.
After this news broke, and it was on the economy. So I wonder if Richard Tice himself sees himself as a bit of the shadow chancellor for Reform, and perhaps buy Richard Tice stock, sell Robert Jenrick stock if you're looking for the economic portfolio of the Reform opposition.
Well, there's not a lot of love between them, is there? Because Richard Tice has previously, well, everyone's previously attacked Robert Jenrick by the sounds of it today, but Richard Tice previously attacked Robert Jenrick for squealing about immigration and called him a coward.
Gosh, I think there are a lot of these tweets that we see and a lot of these comments that we see, not least about Nadeem Zahawi before and now about Robert Jenrick.
Be careful what you tweet, folks. OK, now let's speak to Conservative Party Chairman Kevin Hollinrake. Kevin, good to see you. Well...
And you too.
How are you feeling, as someone once infamously said? What do you make of where the Conservative Party are now?
Well, going forward, of course I feel disappointed. We don't want to lose people from our party, and Rob's proved effective in many different ways, but clearly he wasn't happy not being the leader. That's the top and bottom of this, and the evidence we got was clear and compelling, and it was damning. And Kemi, when she saw that, she took her time, but she was quite clear right from the start that there's no way in the world Rob Jenrick could remain part of our party when he was plotting to undermine our party in the way he was, in a very, very damaging way he was planning it. And we've had our share of problems in the past, of course, and that's often because we haven't had strong leadership. Now we've got strong leadership. We're not having this psychodrama anymore. Kemi's been very clear about that. The party's going forward. We are doing better. She's cutting through, and she did the right thing today, demonstrating once again that she's a strong leader of our party.
Kevin, you say that there was damning evidence. There have been some reports that this was a typed-out resignation letter that was left lying around. Can you confirm those reports? What was this evidence that you speak about that was absolutely irrefutable, in the words of Kemi Badenoch?
Well, so I can't tell you that. We do.
You're the chairman of the Conservative Party.
No. Also, we want to protect our sources. But I can tell you that this information came from Rob Jenrick's own inner circle. So I say it was completely, there was no two ways about it. This evidence was damning. It was treacherous and damning, and there was no way in the world it could be denied. That's the point. So being in possession of that evidence, it was quite clear what was happening. It was what Rob's direction of travel was, and what he was seeking to do with it in terms of undermining our party. And that's thousands of councillors, of course, whose seats are up for grabs this May, and our activists are working hard every day on the street, explaining to people how we've got the right leadership, and we're making the right choices in terms of cutting the cost of doing government, in terms of welfare, but
Kevin,
also cutting taxes
before we get
and
into the
stamp
political
duty
spiel, I
and
just want
business
to drill
rates.
down on what you've just told us, because I think we've learned something new here, in that you've said this came from someone within Robert Jenrick's inner circle, whereas before the information we'd got from the Conservative Party was that this was something that had been left lying around. Piecing these two pieces of evidence together, am I right in saying that someone within Robert Jenrick's inner circle happened upon this information, perhaps in his own office, and went and ran and told you and the Conservative Party when that person within Robert Jenrick's circle saw it? Was he... this stuff was found by one of his staff?
Listen, I can't go further than I've gone, Tom. It wouldn't be fair, and it's very important that we abide by what we agree to do with people we work with. And but as I say, it came from the inner circle. So, and the evidence that we have seen is damning, it is clear, it is compelling, it's irrefutable. So Kemi did absolutely the right thing, shows a strong leadership once again, and has sacked Rob Jenrick from the Shadow Cabinet and suspended his membership of the Conservative Party.
Kevin, the inference seems to be that Robert Jenrick was planning to drop this bombshell to coincide with the obviously very important May elections that are coming up. Can you confirm that's the case?
Well, we believe so, and clearly those elections are very important. We're going to put a lot of hard work into them, and we are making progress as a party. There's no doubt about it. People tell me all the time how excellent Kemi is, so we're moving forward. And I've got to say, I think it's because of Kemi's success. It's not Kemi's failing, she's succeeding. And therefore, the opportunities to lead our party have been totally closed off because Kemi's the right leader. Now, that won't suit everybody, and personal ambition is a potent force in politics, and I think that lies at the heart of Rob Jenrick's decision.
You're making a valiant effort to spin this defection into a positive. And I do understand the logic behind what you just said, but this is not a good day for the Conservative Party. You must be worried about colleagues of yours close to Robert Jenrick, as many of them are, who might be looking to follow him.
Listen, of course, I'm disappointed personally at what's happened here. You know, I've known Rob a long time, and he's clearly been on a journey in terms of his politics, and now that's up to Rob. But of course, I don't want to see defections from this party, but neither do any of us want to have people on that journey who are not loyal to our cause. We cannot have that. It causes the problems we've seen in the past. We've got a strong leader. We need to be united behind her. That's my message to all my colleagues and anybody associated with the Conservative Party. We've got the right leader. We've got the right policies. We need you to put the hard work in to get where we need to go to win that general election in 2029.
Kevin, have you personally spoken to Robert this morning?
No, I haven't. The Chief Whip spoke to him earlier today.
OK, and can you give us anything about how Robert was feeling, what the Chief Whip said, any information?
No, I can't give you any more information. That was a short phone call, but I can't give you any more information than that.
The short phone call that was had between the Conservative Chief Whip and Robert Jenrick, did that end with Robert Jenrick slamming the phone down, as has been reported? I don't know if that's the case or not.
You know Robert Jenrick, you call him Rob, obviously you're quite friendly with him. Would you be surprised if Robert Jenrick had slammed the phone down?
That's just speculation. I don't want to get into that. The facts of this are very clear. There was compelling evidence. Kemi's acted on it in absolutely the right way. We don't want to see... This should not be about us as politicians. It should be about us holding the government to account and getting ready for government again. We're holding the government to account. We've forced 13 U-turns and everything from the winter fuel allowance to family farm tax to grooming gangs. We want to keep on doing that job. That's what we're focused on every single day. And I have no time for people who are focused on their own personal personal ambitions rather than the fortunes of the country, which is what we should be focused upon.
Do you think that is what Robert Jenrick's doing, focusing on his own personal ambitions rather than the good of the country?
I do think that. I do think there's some of that. I'm not saying Rob isn't effective in much of his work, but it was quite clear to a number of us within the Conservative Party that Rob still harbored ambitions about leadership rather than focusing on supporting our leader.
OK, and Kevin, finally and very quickly, how is Kemi this morning? Is Kemi angry? Is she in phone slamming down mode?
Well, I saw Kemi last night and I spoke to Kemi this morning. She was very calm. Of course, she was angry, of course, but she wasn't, not in a way, in an emotional way. She really, like the rest of us, very disappointed in this. This is treacherous, it's disloyal, but she's handled this very calm and very composed under pressure. So Kemi's fine. She's getting on with the job. She's on a visit now to Scotland, supporting our oil and gas industries and other meetings up there too. So she's getting on with the job. I'm getting on with the job, which is trying to make sure we hold the government to account and work together in the national interest.
OK, angry, disappointed, calm and unemotional. What a cocktail. Kevin Hollinrake, thanks indeed for joining us, Chairman of the Conservative Party.
Indeed, thank you very much. Absolutely fascinating morning. Thank you for your company here on GB News as well. Now, we're now joined by Labour councillor Stuart Fawcett. Stuart, good to see you. Thank you very much for coming in. Seismic.
We're having another quiet day in British politics, aren't we?
How many days into the new year are we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Golly gosh, only 15 days in. What do you make of where we are?
I mean, first of all, I like Tom and perhaps like yourself, Dawn, I read Camilla's article recently and was equally as impressed. But I had a few questions and I thought, I wonder what Robert Jenrick is going to do. Is he going to be, at the next election, is he going to be supporting his own leadership? Kemi Badenoch or Nigel Farage. Now, I think we can be pretty sure now he's not going to be sorting Kemi Badenoch. But I still don't know about the other two, because as you've rightly said, he's stateless, realistically, at the moment. He's not a Conservative MP. And there are no firm plans for him to be a Reform MP as we speak right now. And I find this quite interesting because, as you know, Reform have accepted quite a few former Conservative MPs, some quite big fish. And there's two groups of people I'm thinking about, and that's Reform voters and Reform members. Now they've got the largest membership of any political party. So they've got to keep those happy. And I understood that a lot of people who voted Reform or joined Reform didn't want to vote Conservative at the last election, but they didn't see Labour as their option. And with all these new Conservative MPs coming, is that going to keep them happy? So is accepting Robert Jenrick going to please the membership and their voters? And I'm not sure. I think Nigel Farage's decision today is going to entwine with the fate of Reform at the next election on this one.
You ask, what is Robert Jenrick looking at? I mean, is it Badenoch's leadership, Farage's leadership, or his own? Is this an analysis that's too much in a hurry? Robert Jenrick is 44 years old. He actually only turned 44 last week. It was his birthday on the 9th of January. This is a very, very young politician by senior politicians' standards. Could it be that he has made a decision not about the next general election, maybe not even about the one after that, but where politics will be in a decade's time? And he thinks, looking at the trends, that the larger voice will be that of reforms.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think, if anything, 2026 has told us that a week is a long time in politics, let alone 10 years. So it's difficult to forecast. I think Robert Jenrick has clearly displayed he wishes to be a political leader, you know, and you've got to respect that in its own way. But if you want to be the leader, that means being the leader of any political party. I had a consideration once whether, as you rightly point out, he'd take the next decade in an alternative role. I thought at one stage, could he be considered for the candidate for the Mayor of London for the Conservatives? I think that's very unlikely now, but something akin to that. So I don't know. I think what we'd need to be clear on is, does Nigel Farage want to be the Prime Minister after the next general election, or even the one after that? And I think that's probably the question that, you know, Robert Jenrick will want to satisfy for himself if he's going to move to another party. He's already wanted to be the leader of one. Does he want to be the leader of another? Is Shadow Chancellor enough?
Do you think this is the end of the Conservative Party as we know it?
I think Kemi Badenoch has taken a move today that she didn't have a choice to do anything otherwise. I would always be very hesitant to to think of the Conservative Party as done. You know, they're one of the most successful and the most powerful political parties Western Europe has ever seen. So I think to say today, with this alone, they're done, I would never underestimate them.
You say she didn't have a choice. She could have brought him into her office, directly dressed him down, addressed him and negotiated. She could have tried to keep him.
I think you need to probably consider about the position Robert Jenrick's in and what his response to that would be, because obviously she has now left the moratorium period for a vote of no confidence, and they could have been looking at an equally larger drama if the Tory party had been facing a leadership contest right now. That has been averted. So I think realistically this is a decision for Nigel Farage and for Robert Jenrick to come to now, and if I was Kevin Badenoch, I'd be much happier with that outcome than the alternative.
Indeed. Stuart, thank you very much for joining us. That's Labour councillor Stuart Fawcett there.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's plenty more to come on today's developing programme.
There is indeed, yeah. Kemi Badenoch has sacked Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick. Was he planning a dramatic defection to reform? We might be finding that out this afternoon. We are expecting a press conference to happen live. We will be covering it here on GB News, so you don't want to move a muscle.
That's right. We're with you all afternoon. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dorby, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 1. And back to that breaking news.
Yes, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has been sacked from the Tory party.
Well, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, said it comes after irrefutable evidence that he was plotting to defect.
Joining us now is former Conservative MP Sir Alan Duncan. Alan, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, a seismic day, another one in politics. What do you make of where the Conservative Party are now?
I think this is very good news and good riddance. I think he's only been in it for himself. I think what people don't realise is quite how unpopular Robert Jenrick is, actually. One of the reasons I think that Kemi Badenoch won the leadership so decisively is that her vote was reinforced by the fact that her opponent was Robert Jenrick. He has a very, very hard edge, which I think does not help the Conservative Party's reputation and image. And I think that my point about him being self-seeking and in it for himself has been proved today. He's really played his cards very, very badly. He's been rumbled, he's been found out. And I think Kemi Badenoch has quite rightly taken the opportunity to push him out the door, and it brings great credit to her, and I think will do an enormous amount of good for her reputation as being decisive and having the qualities of a leader.
Sir Alan, I hope you won't mind me saying you're known as someone on the left of the Conservative Party, as someone who was very fervent in your support for remaining in the European Union, seen as more Lib Dem adjacent as Conservative Party MPs go. Is this your celebratory moment because the Conservative Party today became a little bit less right-wing?
I think the word left isn't really appropriate on the spectrum of the Conservative Party itself.
Well,
but
even on the right of the spectrum, you can have a left and a right.
Let me complete a sentence. But if I were to take you on the terms you ask your question, I say that the answer is yes. Because I think that competing with reform does not help the Conservative Party. And I think that actually Robert Jenrick did personify a lot of the nasty side, which really doesn't move us forward at all. I think the Conservative Party needs to talk about a lot more than immigration. It has to talk about the economy, what is a good and a bad tax system. We have to talk about social deprivation. If you want to call that left, you can call it left. But that's the country we aspire to govern. And we have to understand and address the issues of the country we aspire to govern. And I don't think Robert Jenrick did. I think what we'll now see probably this afternoon, by the way, is that he is likely to join Reform, because in his press conference a moment ago, in advance of his one at 4:30 this afternoon, Nigel Farage was quite deft, quite nimble footwork, saying, no, it wasn't all staged for 4:30, but I'll give him a call, and I bet you by a miracle it'll suddenly happen at 4:30. Otherwise, Robert Jenrick is beached. He's left stranded with no party and therefore no future. And his self-interest, I think, will probably now push him to join Reform.
Alan, do you think it will be a good thing for Reform? I mean, many Reform voters are saying they are a bit fed up with former Conservatives joining the party. You know, they vote for Reform, they support Reform because they're different. They're not the Conservatives.
Yeah, I think that begs the question of whether we've seen peak Nigel Farage or not. I think there's, of course, more mileage in them, but they're spread quite thinly across the country. So how that converts into parliamentary seats is a very, very big political question. But a lot of sort of dejected Conservatives, dejected, it would seem, for their own interests rather than anything broader, have joined Reform. A lot of them do seem quite maverick. I think that the Nadine Zahawi defection earlier this week does not look convincing, because that does look like blatant, brazen self-interest. And so I think that collection of people, it does build a sort of collective identity for Reform that's not really very politically attractive. It looks like it's individuals who are looking after themselves rather than a movement that is addressing all the interests of the country.
And yet, could your celebration today be slightly misplaced? Because look at the policy platform that the Conservative Party now stands on, leaving the ECHR, repealing the Climate Change Act. The Conservative Party shifted considerably to the right under Kemi Badenoch, who you're now singing the praises of. I mean, the Conservative Party now, for all intents and purposes, offers sort of a generic policy platform.
No, I don't think that's right, and I don't think that will be the case as things develop, because the great thing about the Conservative Party over really centuries, certainly many decades, is that it has a massively effective power of regeneration. But what I would argue, and what I was hinting at earlier, is this needs to come from a broader understanding of the need to present intellectual foundations to what it is to be a Conservative. You always need to persuade every new generation, people of your age, for instance, of what it is to be a Conservative. The sort of things that I was learning 50 years ago in the run-up to Margaret Thatcher, when the likes of the IFS and the IEA were saying really what it needed to take to turn our economy around. We need to do that all over again. And I don't think we've quite really got stuck into that process, because we've inevitably been drawn into the challenge of there being a split on the right of Conservative politics, which means you've got to address the sort of things that you were just talking about, because that's the daily news diet. Well, we've got to try and push it off that short-term daily news diet into persuading people that we have a broad agenda for all people across the whole United Kingdom. That is what can equip a future government properly to govern.
OK, thank you very much, Sir Alan Duncan, there, former Conservative MP, for joining us on that one.
Well, now we should say that friends of GB News can vote in today's poll, and it's an interesting one. Yes, you can scan the QR code that is going to be on your screen any second now, or visit gbnews.com/yourdecide. Yes, we're asking, was Kemi Badenoch right to sack Robert Jenrick?
Yeah, currently it's pretty neck and neck, with 45% saying yes, she was right to sack him, and 55% saying no.
It's moved again. It was 40. It's been 44, 46,
Yeah.
45. It's exhilarating, honestly. I mean, I could sit and watch this all day.
That's because you are quite sad, though, Tom, to be
true.
fair.
Fair point, well made.
And lots of you are getting in touch and reflecting that on gbnews.com/your say as well. Half are happy this is good for reform, half are not happy with Robert Jenrick going to reform, potentially. We don't know for sure yet, but lots of you getting in touch, and yeah, please do keep doing so. And we are expecting that big press conference coming up this afternoon, where we will hopefully hear from Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick. It'll be fascinating in what they've got to say.
Absolutely. More news breaking on this fast-moving topic, of course, throughout this afternoon. Do stay with us, but let's check in on our latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. Of course, plenty more on that breaking news later this hour. First, though, the other headlines this lunchtime. A police chief is fighting for his job after admitting an AI hallucination was used to justify banning Israeli football fans from travelling to Birmingham. The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood says she's lost confidence in Craig Guildford. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, meanwhile, says the refusal from Craig Guildford to resign is now a stain on his character. South East Water is under investigation today after tens of thousands of homes across Kent and Sussex were left without water for days. Storm Goretti caused power cuts and burst pipes across the network, but regulators are now asking whether the company did enough, as thousands have lost supply again today. The UK economy grew by 0.3% in November, helped by services and a rebound in factory output. Construction slumped and growth over 3 months is just 0.1%, with fears of tax rises still freezing spending. Russia has expelled a British diplomat accusing them of secretly working for UK intelligence. London says the claims are malicious and baseless, accusing the Kremlin of acting out of desperation and undermining normal diplomatic relations. Donald Trump says he's been told the killing in Iran has stopped, but won't rule out military action. More than 2,400 people are believed dead, and the US and UK staff have pulled embassy staff and military sites across the region. And Sir Keir Starmer says all options are on the table to protect children online, including an Australian-style ban or under-16s using social media. It comes as X blocks its AI Grok tool from creating sexualised deepfakes after the Prime Minister warned, quote, "Free speech is not freedom to violate consent." Those are the latest headlines for now. Do stay with us for plenty more on that big breaking news.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Thank you very much, Sam. And there is loads more coming up on today's show. And believe me, it is absolutely packed.
Yes, Kemi Badenoch has sacked the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick. Was he planning a dramatic defection to the Reform Party?
All of that and much, much more. This is live breaking news, and we are there for every cough and spit of it for you. GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't you dare move a muscle.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Now, for some, it's a very wet day today, particularly across much of England. Some gusty winds likely in places later as well. But away from the wet weather across eastern England in particular, there's a lot of fine weather to be had. Now, the rain is being caused by this little weather front. Doesn't look much, does it? But it's intensifying as an area of low pressure moves up, and that's just going to bring a very soggy day across much of the south of England, much of the Midlands. That rain spreading up into northeast England too. Parts of southeast Wales also staying fairly dreary. West Wales, the far north of England, much of Scotland and Northern Ireland dry and bright with some sunshine, just a few heavy showers in the far northwest. Temperatures about average, feels pretty chilly with that persistent and heavy rain across the south and the east. Temperatures only 8 or 9 degrees, and the winds could really start to pick up here just for a time as we go through the evening. We do have a warning in place for that rain, the persistent nature of the rain, a lot of spray, a lot of surface water on the roads. Further north and west, we'll keep some largely clear skies into the evening, and of course this time of year, clear skies, well, it's generally going to lead to a frost. There will be some more rain showers coming into the far northwest of Scotland. This rain is going to linger through the evening rush hour for sure, and may well last well into the night across these eastern counties of England, where it's likely to stay pretty overcast. That'll help to keep the temperatures up here. A few showers coming into South Wales and southwest England. Many other areas there will be dry. Some mist and fog likely to form through the night, and as well as that frost across much of Scotland, much of Northern Ireland and Northern England, certainly in rural areas down to freezing or below, well below, particularly where there's still some snow lying on the ground. Now, Friday's a bit of a messy one, a mixture of sunshine and showers, with the showers most frequent in the west. Heavy, thundery showers possible here, particularly for the east of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. Many central and eastern areas, though, dry, certainly a lot drier than today over eastern England, and as a result, probably feeling just a touch milder.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M9, it's closed eastbound between Junction 11 and Junction 10 after fuel spilled on the carriageway. In Leicestershire, the M1 northbound exit slip at Leicester Forest East Services is shut in all lanes due to a load spillage, with recovery expected around 27 minutes past 5 this evening. In Essex, delays continue on the M11 southbound between Junction 10 and Junction 7, with lane closures for road management easing by around 2:45 this afternoon. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and East Midlands Railway report disruption. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is now 20 to 2, and of course the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch has sensationally sacked her Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, she said it comes after irrefutable evidence that he was plotting to defect to reform. We're guessing, we don't know for sure.
Well, joining us now is Jake Richards MP, who's with Christopher Hope, our political editor. Chopper.
That's right. With me now, Tom, is Jake Richards. Jake Richards, what do you make of today's drama?
Well, look, I think it tells us a lot about the state of both Reform and the Conservatives. On the one hand, Reform, it looks like, are about to accept Robert Jenrick, a man that Nigel Farage just a few weeks ago said couldn't be trusted and was a complete fraud. And actually, Reform keep telling your viewers and the British public that they are the party of change, but increasingly it's clear that they're simply a backwater for failed Conservative politicians that failed the country for 14 years. And look, as for the Conservatives, this is déjà vu. We've been through this psychodrama of defections, of rebellions, of plots for 14 years that failed the British people again. It looks like it's over for them, and this is just yet another saga. Meanwhile, today, the news from the government is that waiting lists, the second biggest drop in 15 years, growth figures, much better than expected. The government has taken action on grok. And look, we're in the business of delivering for the British people rather than all the psychodrama that the other two can concentrate on.
It looks like strong leadership. That's right, from Kemi Badenoch. What she's done here, she's seen a problem, she's found evidence, she says, of treachery. She stepped in, she's fired the bloke.
Well, you asked that question with a straight face, just. Look, I think she had to rush out a video from her hotel room in Scotland, filmed on a phone, because she knew full well, as we all have known, that Robert Jenrick has been talking to reform, thinking about defecting, planning this defection, and she only really got round to it when she found out that he was already really out the door. That isn't leadership, that's weakness.
What would you do if you're Robert Jenrick? He's now without a party, he's out of the party as a member and as an MP. Would you say it's certain he'll go to reform?
I've got a simple message for Robert Jenrick. He was the Conservative politician in the last 14 years that had more jobs than anyone else. He was Health Minister when waiting lists rocketed. He was Immigration Minister when illegal migration rocketed and the boat crisis arrived on our shores. He's had his go. I would hang up his boots and go and enjoy a happy retirement.
Perhaps that experience means he's useful to Nigel Farage in opposition.
Well, he's useful at knowing how to fail in government. And if Nigel Farage wants to bring this country down, divide this country and be a disastrous Prime Minister, then it's good to have Robert Jenrick by his side.
Well, I've got you, Jake Richards. You're a Justice Minister because, of course, Robert Jenrick was Shadow Justice Secretary before he was fired. Are you about to U-turn on juries, axing the right to a jury? Will it become changed, as Kemi Badenoch thought so in PMQs this week?
No. It's another thing that Kemi Badenoch is completely wrong on. We're bringing forward a package of proposals to try and reform our criminal justice system to make sure victims get justice more quickly. As your viewers will no doubt know, people are waiting 5-6 years for their day in court. That's not good enough. We're going to have to make difficult but important decisions to change that.
It's more than difficult, you're ripping up Magna Carta. You're ending the right to jury trial that's been there for centuries.
Well, we're not ending the right to jury trials. Jury trials will still be available for the most serious offences. We're taking a pretty modest change from 3% of criminal trials that currently happen before jury trials to 1.5%. Pretty modest.
Jake Richards, thank you there. Jake Richards, keen Labour, obviously, to focus on what they're doing in government, seeing down that threat from Elon Musk over Grok and other areas too. Labour, of course, quite pleased to see the right in fighting.
Well, Chopper, thanks indeed for bringing us that incredibly punchy interview there with a Labour MP with quite a few sound bites. Chopper, what do you make of this battle that is being had now in Westminster? Is this a move of a strong leader or a weak leader? Is this Kemi Badenoch under pressure and flailing and failing? Or is this actually a strengthened Conservative Party leader doing something bold?
I think it's a strengthened leader. I was talking to a former Shadow Cabinet Minister on the way here, and he was saying that frankly, she has done all she could. She found irrefutable evidence of some form of treachery, and therefore she acted on that evidence as soon as she could, and that's what she had to do. I think that we've seen a strong leader. Whether it cuts through, I mean, it creates a problem, it seems, for Nigel Farage, because Nigel Farage, does he want to bring in Robert Jenrick? They've toyed with this idea for a while. They had dinner in November. Danny Kruger, of course, who's a key ally of Robert Jenrick, he went over to Reform UK. That left Jenrick slightly isolated. He's lost the advantage of timing, and that's all in politics. I'm not sure what he's got left in his tank. His negotiating hand is now quite weak with Nigel Farage, as the surprise has gone. But he did go across, as we heard there from Jake Richards. He is a very experienced former government minister, a cabinet minister, which Nigel Farage hasn't got that yet on his team. Nadine Dorries, of course, no longer an MP. So I think it does help Farage, probably. It's brought to a head, I think, this lingering concern over the right, how to unite. It's made Kemi Badenoch look strong, I think, and we'll see later whether he comes across. It's going to be quite a dramatic day in Westminster.
Very much so, and we'll be covering it all live here. Christopher, just before we let you go, there's obviously some pretty big beasts already at the top of reform. I mean, Zia Youssef, Richard Tice. How's this jostling for position going to work out? Well,
Nigel Farage told reporters earlier he doesn't want to see that kind of infighting, which so tainted the final 5 or 6 years of the Tory time in government. That can't happen again, he says. But the problem is he could be importing some of that. With Nigel Farage comes infrastructure, as Tom said earlier, and that could, when you bring your own team in who aren't allied to Nigel Farage, that's when briefings start to happen and concerns start to happen, and you start really, frankly, to look like the a retread of the Tory party over the past 14 years. Nigel Farage said he's not Tories 2.0, but the concern is that's how it looks. And earlier we heard Nigel Farage say he'll unveil a Labour defector next week. He was kind of half joking, but you never know with Farage.
Interesting. Watch this space. Christopher Hope, thank you very much for braving the Westminster weather. Or should that be Westminster? Thank you. We'll let you go get dry.
Oh, thank you very much, Christopher. Gonna have a nice cup of tea.
Oh, lovely.
Calm down, you. OK, yeah, this is GB News. Thank you so much, company. Good afternoon, Britain. And it is 47 minutes past 1 now. And there's lots more coming up in today's show, including we are waiting to hear from Nigel Farage himself and hopefully Robert Jenrick about what the hell is actually going on.
Absolutely. Still waiting on a single word, a single peep from the former Shadow Justice Secretary.
He's not normally a quiet man, is he?
No, watch this space. Well, we'll get to that after your latest weather forecast for the European weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Through the rest of the week and into the weekend, there's some pretty unsettled weather spreading its way eastwards across the Mediterranean. As we go through tomorrow, there'll be rain, even hill snow, pushing through Portugal and Spain, also some heavy bursts of rain across southern France. All of that is going to make its way eastwards, and so although there's some dry, at times bright weather around at the moment, as we go into the weekend, we're in for some heavy thundery rain and also some strong gusty winds leading to rough sea.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So it comes down to money, doesn't it? Always follow the money, follow the money. And, you know, big tech is a big business. It is a very, very powerful industry. And it's pulled a blinder because it has convinced government and schools, teaching unions, you know, the individual local authorities that are responsible for procurement. It has convinced everyone that tech is either not harmful in the case perhaps of social media and smartphones, or actually beneficial. And it's a lie. I mean, it's a complete lie. The evidence is there. It is harmful.
There are plenty of examples in society where there are things that we know that are harmful to children, or that they may come with risks and benefits associated with them. Let's say contact sports, for example. Let's say giving them junk food. But we still give parents the right to make that decision because we believe in the rights of parental responsibility over state intervention in those areas. What makes those areas different to the risks and benefits associated with digital use for kids?
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely. And I, as Rennie knows, I'm about as libertarian as one gets, certainly for adults. I do think when the intersection of individual choice and freedom with child welfare and child safety is rather different. And I think there are many examples of areas where a problem is too big for individual parents to solve. I mean, you've mentioned contact sports, and I think that's a really good example because, of course, there we all have the choice as parents whether our children should or shouldn't engage in contact sports. But phones are rather different. I mean, certainly smartphones, and I think that, you do have a distinction with phones versus edtech. It is literally mandated by schools, and there is no legal right for parents to opt out. So there is no choice.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Some interesting details are starting to emerge about what was this piece of evidence that was so irrefutable, in the words of
Kemi's
Badenoch.
words.
Well, Kate Ferguson of the Sun newspaper, The Sun on Sunday, has said this, that Kemi Badenoch had been hearing rumours for a while, but this irrefutable evidence that was presented to her was, in fact, a resignation letter that was said to have been lying around. And this resignation letter wasn't just a resignation letter from Robert Jenrick to Kemi Badenoch. It also included huge attacks on most of the shadow cabinet. It included an attack on Priti Patel, who Jenrick was allegedly going to blame for being behind the Boris wave of migration. It included attacks on other shadow cabinet colleagues, and this was all planned to inflict maximum damage, which led to the events that we've seen this morning.
This is one of those stories that you can't quite believe. Robert Jenrick is not a stupid man. He's been an incredibly successful politician. He's very good at handling his public image. We all know from the stunts that he puts out on social media. I can't believe that someone like him would leave a resignation letter full of that kind of damning information lying around on a desk or a photocopier. What I do find easier to understand, maybe, is that somebody, I don't know, I'm just speculating, like a lot of people are this afternoon until we hear that press conference, somebody within his inner circle has betrayed him and maybe gone to Kemi and said, this is what's happening.
I mean, it could be that he hasn't told this person from within his inner circle, but this person in his inner circle was there when... I mean, you could print something out on a...
Of course
on a
you can.
printer
No,
in a room. If you've got a room with just a couple of staff members in it, I mean, that's not necessarily being careless. But
so many questions. So many questions this morning, Tom. I mean, is Kemi being weak or strong? Which is I think the great debate here. You know, has she been weak or has she been strong in her behaviour? And what does it make you out there think of our politicians? Is this all about personal ambition? Or is it about politicians caring about where you and I are and where the country's going?
Now, a lot of people are saying that this just makes the Reform Party, Conservative Party 2.0, a slightly more conservative Party. I mean, to some extent, is that even an attack? I mean, would you welcome there to be a replacement for the Conservative Party that's a little bit more conservative?
Well, lots of you are getting in touch, gbnews.com/your say so. Make sure you keep doing so. We're waiting to hear from the two big beasts involved in this particular story.
Absolutely. Do stay with us. We'll be back with you after your latest weather in this country for a change.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Now, for some, it's a very wet day today, particularly across much of England. Some gusty winds likely in places later as well. But away from the wet weather across eastern England in particular, there's a lot of fine weather to be had. Now, the rain is being caused by this little weather front. Doesn't look much, does it? But it's intensifying as an area of low pressure moves up, and that's just going to bring a very soggy day across much of the south of England, much of the Midlands. That rain spreading up into northeast England too. Parts of southeast Wales also staying fairly dreary. West Wales, the far north of England, much of Scotland and Northern Ireland dry and bright with some sunshine, just a few heavy showers in the far northwest. Temperatures about average, feels pretty chilly with that persistent and heavy rain across the south and the east. Temperatures only 8 or 9 degrees. And the winds could really start to pick up here just for a time as we go through the evening. We do have a warning in place for that rain, a persistent nature of the rain, a lot of spray, a lot of surface water on the roads. Further north and west, we'll keep some largely clear skies into the evening. And, of course, this time of year, clear skies, well, it's generally going to lead to a frost. There will be some more rain showers coming into the far northwest of Scotland. This rain is going to linger through the evening rush hour for sure, and may well last well into the night across these eastern counties of England, where it's likely to stay pretty overcast. That'll help to keep the temperatures up here. A few showers coming into South Wales and southwest England. Many other areas there will be dry. Some mist and fog likely to form through the night, and as well as that frost across much of Scotland, much of Northern Ireland and Northern England, certainly in rural areas down to freezing or below, well below, particularly where there's still some snow lying on the ground. Now, Friday's a bit of a messy one, a mixture of sunshine and showers, with the showers most frequent in the west. Heavy, thundery showers possible here, particularly for the east of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. Many central and eastern areas, though, dry, certainly a lot drier than today over eastern England, and as a result, probably feeling just a touch milder.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get us on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 15th of January. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Dawn Neeson.
Now, major breaking news this lunchtime. Kemi Badenoch has sacked the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the Shadow Cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his Shadow Cabinet colleagues.
So it was the evidence that Robert Jenrick was planning a dramatic defection to reform. Earlier today, Nigel Farage did say he had had conversations with him.
There was a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr Jenrick's concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
Well, the Labour Party has been quick to react, calling it another chapter of Tory psychodrama.
Meanwhile, Reform's Zia Youssef takes aim at the Tory leader, saying Kemi begins the brutal purge of those most likely to challenge her in May, post the electoral wipeout, telling Tory grandee James Cleverly to keep an eye on his phone. Could this be the beginning of a huge wave of defections to Reform?
Well, this is a developing story throughout this afternoon. On this channel, we'll be speaking live to Kemi Badenoch later on this afternoon. We're expecting a press conference too from Nigel Farage. Could he unveil Robert Jenrick live at that press conference?
And we will be covering every single minute of it for you here live. And Robert Jenrick, not normally known for not saying anything, has yet to speak. So hopefully we'll be able to go to him as well and get some clue as to what is actually definitely going on.
Absolutely. But shall we speak now to the senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgie? Because, Christian, this is a shock to some in Westminster, but to others, they say it's about time.
Yeah, I mean, both on the left and people allied with Robert Jenrick, people on the left in the Tory party clearly knew that he was still a problem, and regardless of how well Kemi Badenoch's doing, there was always going to be an enormous fallout from the upcoming May elections where she would be quite weak and Robert Jenrick would still be in the best possible position to defenestrate her. And with Mr. Jenrick himself, I mean, clearly he's been considering this for a very long time. Just before we came on air, I spoke to a senior Tory party source who claimed they'd had reports of Mr. Jenrick talking to fellow Conservative MPs saying that he can't see how he'd hold on to his Newark constituency unless he defects. But there is a level of perplexion, not least because, of course, Mr. Jenrick's main policy at the last Tory leadership election was to quit the ECHR, something he very successfully persuaded Kemi Badenoch to take up as official Tory policy.
I mean, Christian, we are getting both sides of it here. Some people supporting what's happened and the fact that Robert Jenrick may be going to Reform, and some people not happy with that situation. Do you think the way Kemi Badenoch has behaved this morning, though, is a sign of strength or a sign of weakness?
It's a sign of short-term strength, to be sure. I think this is the strongest Kemi Badenoch has been since becoming party leader. Obviously, whilst 20% in the polls doesn't sound particularly impressive, it still means the Tories are in second place. That is an achievement. And the mood on the backbenches of the Tory party is particularly buoyant. And over the last few months, even those who were very sceptical of Kemi Badenoch to start with, and perhaps were still hoping that Robert Jenrick would somehow usurp her, had started to warm and to become more loyal. So I think she struck while the iron's hot, because, as I say, regardless of what the mood is at the moment, I think it would sour, will still sour quite a bit after the local elections, but she's got rid of her biggest enemy, and so it shores her up for another set of local elections.
Now, you're very plugged in with this Westminster world. I believe you're speaking to us from within the Houses of Parliament themselves. But could you tell us exactly what has gone on this morning? Because you reported that stuff was left lying around by Robert Jenrick. Is this a resignation letter?
Yeah, so it sounds like essentially a resignation speech was found either on a printer or somewhere nearby at Mr. Jenrick's office. I hear it was actually a fellow member of the Shadow Cabinet who discovered it and ran it over to Ms. Badenoch's office to dob Mr. Jenrick in like scenes from a school playground. But yeah, the reason that I think it is a resignation statement is that we are hearing, or I am hearing, claims about what was in that statement. One senior source told me that there was a very large broadside about the Tory party's record in government, which they pointedly note was, of course, Mr. Jenrick's record, he was very vocal in backing several prime ministers, but he then used it to say basically that that's why we need Nigel Farage. And there were particularly pointed criticisms against fellow members of the Shadow Cabinet, like the Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride, particularly the Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel, who of course was Home Secretary under Boris Johnson when the Boris wave, when those 900,000 net migrants entered the country, and she is a particular source of ire for the sort of firm right of the Conservative Party.
And Christian, because you do have your ear to the ground so much so, I get the impression from the stories we're hearing here that Kemi Badenoch is absolutely furious about this. Would you say that's a fair comment?
Well, do you know, I'm not sure it is. I think she's delighted. She's certainly delighted at the timing, which her office seemed to deliberately plan in order to completely upend Nigel Farage's morning press conference and almost certainly disrupt this afternoon's press conference. It's completely tripped Mr. Jenrick up. It seems like the way that this has happened means it's going to put off his most loyal fellow Tory MPs from also potentially crossing the floor. So there may be some performative anger, but actually this is a very good day for Kemi Badenoch, whichever side of the argument you're on.
And Calgi, before we let you go, in a word, some people have been asking for the text of this document, this excoriating evidence, to be published. Jacob Rees-Mogg has called on this to be published. You say people are getting some of the context of what's written in it. Do you think that this letter will be published?
I think it will be published by one side or the other, maybe at 4:30 this afternoon by Mr. Jenrick himself. Who knows?
Interesting. Okay. We'll wait to see. Thank you very much. Christian Calgi, political correspondent at the Daily Express newspaper there. Thank you very much.
Well, now, friends of GB News can vote in today's You Decide poll, or even You Decide poll, at gbnews.com/ you guessed it, You Decide.
We're asking, was Kemi Badenoch right to sack Robert Jenrick? Currently, it's pretty neck and neck, with 45% saying yes, she was right to sack him, 55% saying no.
Now, while some people say that's a neck-and-neck result, of course, everyone in Scotland will be screaming that it is a decisive, once-in-a-generation... absolutely, end of all debate, sort of whopping 10-point victory for one side over the other, which I'm inclined to agree with.
However, it's not, and you can still vote and change those figures in any case, so please do. And let us know, gbnews.com/ your say on any thoughts you're having. So far, many of you think Robert Jenrick going to reform is a very good thing. Half of you thinking it's not a good thing.
Well, shall we speak to the deputy editor of the Conservative Home website and columnist Henry Hill? Henry, this is a big day for the Tory party. A lot of people on the left of the Tory party have been cock-a-hoop.
Yeah, and I think that really you've put your thumb on the nub of the problem that the Conservative Party has, which is that it is and remains extremely divided and does not agree with itself on pretty much anything. What went wrong over the last 14 years, what the right economic policy should be, what public spending commitments should be, what ICHR and law and order policies should be. And Kemi Badenoch, unlike Robert Jenrick, who, whether you love him or loathe him, agree or disagree, ran on a quite explicit, I think we need these changes, let's talk about them, leadership ticket. Kemi Badenoch ran on a unity leadership ticket. And as we saw under Rishi Sunak, that sort of unity involves not doing very much, because you can't do anything, because any movement in any direction upsets people. And so, yes, there are people on the left of the Conservative Party, in the parliamentary party, who are very happy that Robert Jenrick is gone. But that's ridiculous. Even if unless you deeply, deeply, deeply disagree with his politics, in which case I hate to break it to them, but look at what Kemi Badenoch's policy on the ECHR is. He was indisputably one of the strongest performers in the shadow cabinet, and one of the MPs who was best at expressing the concerns of an awful lot of Conservative Party members and centre-right and right-wing voters in this country about immigration and law and order. If he was planning to defect, she's done absolutely the right thing, but he is a loss to the Conservative Party regardless.
Is he a gain for reform, though, Henry?
If he joins reform, and again, we haven't yet as you say, seen the evidence. I assume currently that it exists, because otherwise Robert would presumably have come out and said something. He is probably the most substantial, no, he is definitely the most substantial defection they've had. I think one of the things that would have been slightly disappointing for Reform so far is that most of the Tory defections that they've got are ex-MPs. Relatively low profile people, and people about whom the question can just be asked, well, is this person doing this just because they think Reform is a better chance of getting a seat in the Commons at the next election, given that the Conservatives are being much less generous to ex-MPs than they have in the past when it comes to being reselected. Robert would have been, and might still be, a real scout for Reform UK. But partly for that reason, I would be a bit surprised if Robert Jenrick was defecting, because if there's one thing that is common about all of Nigel Farage's parties, all the way back to UKIP, is that there's not an awful lot of room in them for anyone who takes the spotlight away from Nigel Farage.
That was one question I'm keen to find out what people think of that, because obviously you've got Zia Youssef, you've got Richard Tice, and Richard Tice seemed a bit sort of like discombobulated by this news this morning. It's the first he'd heard of it was when pretty much all of us did. There's a lot of big names jostling for positioning that party already.
Well, I mean, the irony is, yes, there's some big characters, if you like. There's some big egos, but on the other hand, if you think about, and this would be a challenge for any party that's performed as amazingly as Reform UK is performing, to go from being a party with a handful of MPs to a party of potentially a party of government in one parliament. They actually have an enormous personnel deficit, right? If you think about, they need hundreds and hundreds of people capable of being good legislators. They need 100 or more people capable of being good ministers, at least. That is an awful lot of space to fill. So on paper, there would be space for Robert Jenrick. There'd be space for 100 Robert Jenricks. But it's more a temperamental and presentational issue. Nigel Farage has never allowed any of his parties to get bigger than he is. He has never allowed them to grow into institutions that restrict his freedom of manoeuvre. And if you think, why has Robert Jenrick been such an effective member of the shadow cabinet? Well, in part, it's because he's been prepared to range beyond his brief. Many members of the Tory shadow cabinet are hobbled by the fact that because the Conservatives don't have any policies yet, because of their interminable policy review, they simply don't have anything to say. They can say Labour is bad, but that's not particularly interesting to journalists. They don't have an alternative. Whereas Robert Jenrick, even if you thought it was cringe, he'd go on the tube and confront fare avoiders and all the rest of it. Now, if he does that sort of thing if he did that sort of thing in Reform UK, if he started freelancing on policy, if he started taking more media attention, one, it would start inevitably, because we're journalists, speculations about whether or not he's going for Nigel Farage's job, and it would probably, on historical evidence, suggest that he will come a cropper like every other person who has overshadowed Nigel Farage, or even looked like they were going to.
Very interesting thoughts indeed. Watch this space. Thank you very much, Henry. That is Deputy Editor, Conservative Home and columnist Henry Hill there for you.
Well, joining us now is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, because, Olivia, I believe you have some breaking news for us.
Well, yes, a Conservative Party source, a senior Conservative Party source, has said that the leader's office is believed to be in possession of a number of pieces of evidence that confirm Jenrick plans to defect to Reform and attack individual Conservative MPs. So that's the first time we've heard this, that there were a number of different pieces of evidence that Robert Jenrick was going to defect. And the thinking is that that defection was going to happen very, very soon indeed. Robert Jenrick pulled out of a speaking engagement at the weekend, and it is thought that the defection was going to happen within the next 24 hours. Now, that explains why Kemi Badenoch acted so suddenly. Yesterday, Robert Jenrick was at a meeting with other MPs, chipping in on ideas for Conservative policy. He obviously had no idea about this. He was blindsided. Kemi Badenoch's video this morning was unusual, not only in that it was a very, very stark, brutal attack on Robert Jenrick. There was no pussyfooting around. There was no letter talking about all the brilliant things that Robert Jenrick's done in government. It was Robert Jenrick has been sacked with immediate effect. We're watching it now, and if you're watching on your televisions, you'll see the background behind her was blurred. Now, that implies that she hadn't planned this. It wasn't a pre-scripted piece to camera in front of perhaps a Union Jack. She acted on the spur of the moment because she wanted to push Robert Jenrick before he was able to jump. Now, that implies that these pieces of evidence revealed that he was going to defect within the next 24 hours. Well, that's all very interesting, but of course the big question now is what happens next. Robert Jenrick has two choices. He can either bide his time, He can sit as an independent MP. He can claim that he was never going to defect to Reform and that Kemi Badenoch, as Nigel Farage has suggested, added 2 and 2 together and made 5. That option is quite difficult for him, given that Nigel Farage today has said publicly that he and Robert Jenrick have been in conversation, although he stopped short of suggesting that a defection was imminent. The other option Robert Jenrick has, of course, is to defect to Reform immediately. But what would become of him there? He would like, it's thought, to be Reform's Shadow Chancellor, perhaps Chancellor in a Reform government. Where would that leave Richard Tyson, Zia Youssef, who have been with Nigel Farage now for so long? Both of them have publicly expressed their desire to be a Chancellor in a Reform government. So Robert Jenrick here is sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's been on manoeuvres for so long. He's been promoting himself, pushing himself forward. He's gained real respect, actually, on all sides of the House for his social media campaigns. But now it feels as though Kemi Badenoch has pulled out the rug from under him. Where does he go now? What does he do? Is there a space for him in Reform? He will want a very, very senior job there if he is to jump. The one thing that we do know is that one way or another, he's going to have to speak quickly. Kemi Badenoch implied that he was a bit weaselly, that she talked about this political psychodrama, suggesting that Robert Jenrick was plotting in secret. That's not something that a politician, not the sort of labels a politician wants to have attached to them. And if Robert Jenrick is to see that off, he will have to explain very quickly, probably this afternoon, what the story is behind this.
Olivia, just quickly and finally, we are hearing from some sources in Westminster, which is obviously where you are, that we are expected to hear from Robert Jenrick this afternoon. Can you confirm any more details on that?
That is the rumour that's circulating. It does sound as though we are going to hear from Robert Jenrick this afternoon. I don't have absolute confirmation, but I would keep watching your tellies because there is this Reform press conference at 4:30, and I think there is quite a high chance that we do, despite what Nigel Farage said this morning, hear from Robert Jenrick himself.
We could get confirmation on that any minute. Olivia, thanks indeed for being with us. We'll be back to you as we get more breaking news.
Yes, indeed. Now, let's go to political commentator Suzanne Evans. Suzanne, what's your take on where we are today?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people are saying that Kemi Badenoch coming out and sacking Robert Jenrick before he could actually announce his potential alleged defection to Reform showed strong leadership. I have to say, I think my first reaction was, actually, it looks like she's trying to get rid of a rival. Because let's be honest, since Kemi Badenoch won the Conservative leadership campaign, she's not exactly been riding high in the polls, having huge successes. Robert Jenrick, on the other hand, looks like rather than take his losing of that election lying down, it's almost like he renewed his efforts into reapplying for the job. He has, as we've just heard from Olivia Utley, run a very, very good social media campaign. He's been chasing down thieves at car boot sales. He's been tackling fare dodgers on the London Underground. He's been very strong on issues around immigration and so on and so forth. And it was almost, it seemed to me, as though he was re-auditioning for the role, trying to get Conservative Party members to realise that they'd made a mistake in choosing him over Kemi Badenoch, and that if she fell at a hurdle, he'd be there to pick up the pieces again. But now we've got this dramatic announcement. Will he or won't he go to Reform? I think my feeling is that if he wants to go to Reform, Reform is going to have to let him in. There's no doubt about that. If they accept someone like Nadine Zahawi, and let's be honest, Nadine Zahawi's defection hasn't gone down terribly well among Reform members this week. They remember his noises about promising not to have vaccine passports and then supporting them. He was sacked, you might remember previously, for concerns over his tax affairs when it was alleged he hadn't paid the correct amount of capital gains tax. He was embroiled in the expenses scandal when it was revealed that he says inadvertently charged for the cost of heating his horses' stables. So there is all this kind of issues around Nadine Zahawi, whereas Robert Jenrick comes across very much as a straight-up right-wing, now former Conservative, of the very type that Reform members would like to see in their party. I think it would also be a win for Reform because, as if he did ever had become leader of the Conservative Party, I think then Reform would have been in deep trouble. They would have had a very strong Conservative Party opposing them. That's not going to happen, whatever happens, and that's very good for Reform.
Now, Suzanne, you know Nigel Farage. You've worked with Nigel Farage. You were his deputy chairman in the days of UKIP. You wrote his manifesto in 2015. What do you think will be going through his head now? Famously, he's a man who likes to be in control of events, certainly in control of his own political party. And today, he is having to respond to events rather than creating them.
Yes, that's right, and he won't like that. I have to say I had a lot of sympathy what your previous commentator, Henry Hill, was saying. Nigel Farage is a man who very much likes to be in charge. I suspect Robert Jenrick is also very much a man who likes to be in charge, and you could very well have a clash of wills there. I'd very much like to be a fly on the wall and overhear the conversations they'll now be having behind closed doors, but of course the outcome of those conversations remains to be seen. On the one hand, obviously Robert Jenrick would potentially be a massive asset to reform, there's no doubt about that. But as Henry Hill said, there could potentially be a clash of egos, as we might see senior leaders in reform squabbling for who gets what position should reform form a government at the next election. It will be a very interesting one to see. I think it'll definitely be popcorn time. I think you should cling on to your seats, really. I'm very much looking forward to the press conference at 4:30 this afternoon. We shall see.
Get the popcorn ready. It'll be live here on GB News. Suzanne, thank you very much. Political commentator Suzanne Evans there for us. Just reading this, just coming in, Tom, that Jenrick was at the shadow cabinet only yesterday. Wow. Between 4 and 5. Offering his thoughts on Tory strategy.
I wonder if Kemi Badenoch knew then and was biting her tongue through that meeting. I want to know when this resignation letter was found.
When it was,
when it was taken. Because it sounds like Kemi Badenoch knew last night, perhaps? Maybe it was this morning?
Jacob Rees-Mogg has said that, we need to see the evidence. Now, we need to see this irrefutable evidence that he was planning to defect, to reform, and to be very critical of the Cabinet and, by extension, Kemi Badenoch.
Because what Henry Hill was saying is that OK, we can disbelieve that there was the evidence, but, I mean, that's all right for us to do. I mean, if there wasn't actual evidence, then wouldn't the one person saying, no, this is all false, and being all over our media and putting out statements and all the rest of it, be Robert Jenrick himself? But he's silent, which suggests that it's true.
For now. For now. We are hoping to hear, as you heard Olivia Utley earlier on say, we are hoping to hear from Robert Jenrick this afternoon. We are definitely going to hear from Nigel Farage this afternoon. And also, Kemi Badenoch will be interviewed by GB News live this afternoon as well.
Well, this is the rolling breaking news that Kemi Badenoch has sacked Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick. Was he planning a dramatic defection to reform, and could we see that this afternoon? Well, you're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dorby, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are getting the popcorn in, yes.
Sorry, what was that, Dawn?
We're getting
live
the
on
popcorn.
television.
We are getting the popcorn in. We're not even joking.
We actually do have popcorn
We have
coming.
got so much coming up for you this afternoon. We don't want to move a muscle. You definitely don't want to move a muscle. We're talking to all the really, really important people involved in this live-breaking political story.
And we are waiting to see what this man on our screens, Robert Jenrick, might have to say himself.
Yes.
Why? Well, the Prime Minister has questioned why the Conservatives took so long to sack Robert Jenrick.
It comes after Kemi Badenoch fired the Shadow Justice Secretary after irrefutable evidence showed he was plotting to defect. Let's remind ourselves what Kemi had to say this morning.
This morning, I removed the Conservative whip from Robert Jenrick after dismissing him from the Shadow Cabinet. I was very sorry to be presented with clear, irrefutable evidence, not just that he was preparing to defect, but he was planning to do so in the most damaging way possible to the Conservative Party and his Shadow Cabinet colleagues. It is my responsibility to protect our party, and faced with that information, I took the only decision that any responsible leader could. Because the British public are tired of political psychodrama. So am I. They saw too much of it in the last government, they're seeing too much of it in this government. I will not repeat those mistakes.
We will be finding out live this afternoon on GB News whether Robert Jenrick is going to go to reform, and we are also going to hear from Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has already said that he's had conversations with Jenrick. Let's have a listen.
So there's a lot of people seriously considering their future. As far as Mr Jenrick's concerned, of course I've talked to Robert Jenrick. Was I on the verge of signing a document with him? No. But have we had conversations? Yes.
So he was considering leaving the Conservatives and joining Reform UK?
I think virtually every Conservative is considering leaving the Conservatives, yes.
Well, that was Nigel Farage speaking in Scotland earlier today. He is hurtling down to London as we speak, perhaps getting on a bit of a faster move on than he was once prepared.
Yes, exactly. And I think the words to the press conference may have been slightly rearranged to be a completely different subject. But we will be bringing you that live here on GB News. We are also going to be talking live to Kemi Badenoch this afternoon as well.
We are.
See what she's got to say.
She'll have a lot to say.
I think she will.
Sure. But shall we get the Labour perspective now? Because joining us is the former Labour member of the European Parliament, Sean Spires. Sean, thanks for being with us this afternoon. I'm a little bit confused by Keir Starmer's statement. He says this shows Kemi Badenoch is weak. How?
Well, look, I think I must clarify right at the beginning that it's over 25 years since my political career ended ignominiously, and I'm certainly not a Labour spokesperson. I work for a non-party environmental charity, I'm afraid. So I can give you a kind of view on how...
Let's get the overarching view then. Let's get your overarching assessment.
Yeah, I think my view is that on climate, we've had a kind of great cross-party consensus for years. Mr. Thatcher was the first world leader to speak out on climate change. Boris Johnson was great on COP26. Theresa May brought in net zero. What's happened in the last, since Kemi Badenoch became leader, is the Conservatives have tried to become kind of reform light on climate change. It's clearly not working. And what I hope, if they start losing people like Robert Jenrick to reform, the Conservatives can return to the mainstream of politics, and we can get back to some sort of seriousness about this huge
Sorry,
threat.
Sean, what do you mean it's clearly not working? Because the Conservative Party, you're right, has said it would repeal the Climate Change Act. It's also said that it would back out of the ECHR. I mean, you say it's not working, but if you're to add up the Reform vote and the Tory vote, 30 and 20% apiece, what you have is a majority of the British electorate supporting those policies.
Yeah, I think it's not working in terms of keeping very right-wing people in the Conservative Party. They're drifting off to reform. So the Conservatives are a kind of sensible, historic, mainstream political party on issues like climate and the economy, but they're in danger of aping a quite extreme party of reform and losing some of their members like Robert Jenrick. And but I have to stress, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not really a kind of political talking head. I'm an environmental and climate campaigner, and it's the environment I care about, and it's the Conservatives returning to the centre ground on the environment that's really what I want. I'd love reform, by the way, to join the centre ground on it as well. It's too important for party politics.
It's interesting, Sean, that you refer to reform as extreme. I mean, they are the most popular party in the country at the moment. What do you mean by extreme?
Well, I think people might not know their policies, but one thing on climate change is they don't believe it's caused by humans, and that is a weird fringe position. There's not a scientific institution, respectable scientific institution in the world that holds on to that position. So it's a pretty extreme position.
Is that actually their position? Because, I mean, we interview reform politicians all the time. I mean, a lot of them accept that the climate... I think the whole party accepts that the climate is changing and that human activity has a huge role in that. I think it's also fair to say that, I mean, volcanoes have a role in it too, right? I mean, is there much actual disagreement there?
Yeah, I think it's because no sensible person thinks that there aren't sort of normal climatic variations, but what has caused us to go up to 1.5 degrees warming since industrial times and getting towards 2% is human-made emissions, and that's what they dispute. They say, oh, it's sunspots, it's volcanoes, it's whatever. No, the thing that is causing climate breakdown is man-made climate emissions, carbon emissions.
But hang on. The Reform Party policy is to be against net zero policy rather than to deny the climate is changing. I haven't heard a single Reform politician ever deny that the climate is changing. They just think it's better to adapt to a changing climate rather than try and stop it.
Well, and they're going to intensify the changes by fracking, by drilling, by going for oil and gas, by reneging on contracts for renewables. That's what Richard Tice has said, by turning away huge billions and billions of pounds of investment in the UK's clean energy future. So they are absolutely...
The UK is 1% of global emissions, less than 1% now of global emissions. I mean, the UK changing its policy on this is not going to change the world's rate of warming, is it?
Well, as I always say when I come on GBNews, you need to be more patriotic. Britain has shown huge leadership since Mrs Thatcher's time on this, and it's respected around the world as the first major economy to introduce the Climate Change Act, to introduce net zero, and we do punch above our weight.
Given the rate our economy is growing, perhaps it's showing the world what not to do.
Well, it's certainly not growing because of... The reason it's not growing is certainly not because of our investment in clean energy. That will bring down the cost of energy in time. And if you see what's happening in China as they race ahead with electric vehicles, solar panels, etc., the future is clean and green, and I'd like a Union Jack on it.
OK.
Thank you very much. That is former Labour MEP there, Sean Spurs. Thank you very much for joining us. Just want to... another breaking line coming in for you. Evidently, all Tory members received an email from Kemi Badenoch with the video about Mr Jenrick's resignation. The email added the words, "Thank you for your continued support." It included a link to her statement, which went out on X, has been viewed by more than 1.5 million times.
This is a really important signal of what is going on in Conservative Central Office or campaign headquarters right now. Clearly, they're worried about a member exodus.
I think
clearly
they
are worried that
says.
if and when Robert Jenrick defects, it's not just Robert Jenrick that defects. It's people that support Robert Jenrick that go as well. And let's not forget, he got a huge chunk of the Conservative membership vote at the leadership election. I want to say it was something like 45% that he won of the Conservatives who voted in that election. Clearly, the chairman of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, everyone else, is thinking we need to cauterise this wound here. And that is that email that has been sent to Conservative members.
Yeah, exactly that. And the other breaking line is Jenrick's constituency party have welcomed his sacking.
Wow.
Glad to get rid of him.
Well, that is the news. Kemi Badenoch has sacked Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
Was he planning that dramatic defection to reform? Well, you're going to find out here on GB News this afternoon.
Yes, do stay with us. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Now, for some, it's a very wet day today, particularly across much of England. Some gusty winds likely in places later as well. But away from the wet weather across eastern England in particular, there's a lot of fine weather to be had. Now, the rain is being caused by this little weather front. Doesn't look much, does it? But it's intensifying as an area of low pressure moves up, and that's just going to bring a very soggy day across much of the south of England, much of the Midlands. That rain spreading up into northeast England too. Parts of southeast Wales also staying fairly dreary. West Wales, the far north of England, much of Scotland and Northern Ireland dry and bright with some sunshine, just a few heavy showers in the far northwest. Temperatures about average, feels pretty chilly with that persistent and heavy rain across the south and the east. Temperatures only 8 or 9 degrees. And the winds could really start to pick up here just for a time as we go through the evening. We do have a warning in place for that rain, the persistent nature of the rain, a lot of spray, a lot of surface water on the roads. Further north and west, we'll keep some largely clear skies into the evening. And, of course, this time of year, clear skies, well, it's generally going to lead to a frost. There will be some more rain showers coming into the far northwest of Scotland. This rain is going to linger through the evening rush hour for sure, and may well last well into the night across these eastern counties of England, where it's likely to stay pretty overcast. That'll help to keep the temperatures up here. A few showers coming into South Wales and southwest England. Many other areas there will be dry. Some mist and fog likely to form through the night, and as well as that frost across much of Scotland, much of Northern Ireland and Northern England, certainly in rural areas down to freezing or below, well below, particularly where there's still some snow lying on the ground. Now, Friday's a bit of a messy one, a mixture of sunshine and showers, with the showers most frequent in the west. Heavy, thundery showers possible here, particularly for the east of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. Many central and eastern areas, though, dry, certainly a lot drier than today over eastern England, and as a result, probably feeling just a touch milder.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M8 westbound at junction 31, a broken down vehicle is partially blocking the carriageway, so expect minor delays. On the M1 northbound between junction 30 and junction 31 near Rotherham, one lane is shut because of another breakdown. In Leicestershire, the M1 northbound exit slip at Leicester Forest East Services is closed after a load spillage, with delays likely into the early evening. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and East Midlands Railway report disruption between Liverpool Lime Street and Liverpool South Parkway. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Going to be dangerous.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past 2. And as you might be able to see if you're watching on television, we've got the popcorn out. Why, of course? Well, Robert Jenrick has been sacked not only from the Shadow Cabinet, but from the Conservative Party. His membership has been terminated. He is now an independent MP. And now, this afternoon, we're waiting to see what he has to say.
Yeah, we are hoping to hear from Robert Jenrick live this afternoon. Also, we are definitely going to hear from Nigel Farage this afternoon, because obviously the smart money is now on Robert Jenrick. couldn't tell you what he was doing with that earlier on Robert Jenrick defecting to a reform, and this is the reason he was sacked earlier on. We are definitely going to hear from our Kemi Badenoch, who had just been found out that she emailed all Tory members first thing this morning about this story and linked into the post she put on social media about Robert Jenrick being sacked. It's been viewed 1.5 million times. So this is the reason we have got the popcorn out.
Keep going, Dawn.
Yeah, you just enjoy yourself.
Every new fact that you give me, I'm just ingesting more popcorn.
So it's a real popcorn moment.
There's going to be a box office press conference with Nigel Farage, likely with Robert Jenrick being brought out. Will there be fireworks? We're not sure. We have the popcorn ready. On this channel, we'll be speaking live to Kemi Badenoch, the woman of the moment, to see exactly what has gone on behind the scenes. When did she know about this resignation letter that supposedly was written but no one has yet seen? And, of course, throughout the afternoon, we've been hearing from party leaders across the political spectrum reacting to the sensational sacking of Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, what he said. Carry on saying it.
The Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, posted on Twitter that one more rat is leaving the sinking ship.
He's got an obsession with water and ships and swimming trunks and things,
He loves a water slide.
Meanwhile, Green Party leader Zach Palensky has also shared this reaction online,
seemingly criticising the other parties by stating that politics for one too many leaders is just a game.
Before we introduce our next guest, friends of GB News can vote in today's poll by scanning the QR code on screen by the popcorn somewhere down there, or visiting gbnews.com/you decide. We are asking, was Kemi Badenoch right to sack Robert Jenrick? Currently, it's pretty... Well, it's not neck and neck, is it? Let's be honest.
It's a 10-point lead.
It's close.
Yeah.
45% of you saying yes, she was right to sack him, and 55% saying no. So make sure you have your say and see if you can change those numbers for you.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that throughout the afternoon. But shall we speak now to the Conservative activist, Hugo Rasenberg? Hugo, is this a decisive moment for a strong leader, or is this actually a pretty dark moment for the Conservative Party, losing one of its brightest lights?
I mean, absolutely not. I mean, you might have got out the popcorn, Tom, but I think some people in the Conservative Party will be fetching the champagne. Because this is a situation where we have a Judas who has betrayed the party. He had the aspirations for leader. He was unsuccessful. He's thrown his toys out the pram and he's walked off. I mean, this is the worst act of being a Judas since Sol Campbell left Tottenham for Arsenal.
He might say Judas was paid and that he is making a sacrifice.
No, I don't think that's fair. I mean, this was a political blunder, if you look at it. He was looking to inflict massive damage on the Conservative Party. His plot was foiled, and now he's got to pay the price. He's in a weakened position.
I mean, Hugo, you've got your ear to the ground, as it were, on this one. Do we know how the plot was foiled? I mean, we're hearing stories about letters left on photocopiers, maybe, evidence that was sort of like, you know, irrefutable. Do you know any more about it?
No, I haven't been into central office. I'm not. I haven't heard those conversations today. No, I'm up in Birmingham.
But you are with your ear to the ground amongst the activists, amongst the foot soldiers of the Conservative Party. You're no doubt across the usually fairly effervescent Conservative WhatsApp groups. What's being said amongst your contemporaries?
I think people are broadly in agreement. They feel like, I know a lot of people like myself who are working really hard, especially on these elections that we got coming up in May. And in Birmingham, where I'm based, you know, Robert hasn't helped us. He came here, he cherry-picked an area, he called it a slum, and he buggered off back down to London. You know, this is not a situation where he was of any use to us in the Midlands, and he's not going to help us win elections here. So I think a lot of the other candidates that I speak to are going, good, he came to this city and he disrespected it, and having him out the house is one less person we have to apologise for on the doorstep.
Yeah, Hugo, just to be clear, that's when he made the comment about he didn't see many white faces in Birmingham.
Yeah, and when he went to Handsworth and cherry-picked that as an area which is struggling. And it is an area which is struggling, but it's struggling because of a failing Labour council, not because of the people who live there.
And yet this was a big scandal at the time of the Conservative Party conference, or at least much of the media tried to make it so, and Kemi Badenoch defended him.
Well, At that point, you've got to have that collective responsibility within the cabinet, right? You can't be hanging each other out to dry in the same way that Robert has done to the whole party today.
Well, Hugo Rosenberg, thanks indeed for getting us the view of the Conservative foot soldier, of the Conservative activist on the ground. Yeah. Thanks indeed.
The ones that do all the hard work. OK, This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There is seriously loads more coming up on today's show.
Yes, as we've been saying, Kemi Badenoch has sacked the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick. But could this defection to reform come sooner than was planned?
But if you are in search of some holiday sunshine to get away from it all, and you don't want to, really, you want to stay here with us on the popcorn, here is the weather for the top European holiday destinations. Don't eat too much.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Through the rest of the week and into the weekend, there's some pretty unsettled weather spreading its way eastwards across the Mediterranean. As we go through tomorrow, there'll be rain, even some hill snow pushing through Portugal and Spain, also some heavy bursts of rain across southern France. All of that is going to make its way eastwards, and so although there's some dry, at times bright weather around at the moment, as we go into the weekend, we're in for some heavy thundery rain and also some strong gusty winds leading to rough sea.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Do you trust what you're being told?
Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
We can allow. We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 to 3.
OK, I just want to read this out from our very own Camilla Tominey here about what's happened today. Kemi Badenoch sacking Robert Jenrick after being presented with that clear, irrefutable evidence that he was defecting to reform. Camilla has said, kapow, if Conservatives did girl power, Badenoch has just reinvented herself as Scary Spice. Good quote.
Scary Spice, blimey. Well,
Better be Baby Spice.
That's definitely true. Yeah. Should we get the view of the chief political correspondent for the Times newspaper, Aubrey Allegretti? Aubrey, we are expecting Jenrick to say something. He's been so suspiciously quiet for the entirety of the afternoon thus far.
Yeah, it's been quite conspicuous, isn't it? Normally, Robert Jenrick isn't far away from a camera or a microphone, but he's certainly been holed up, speaking to confidence, trying to understand his next move. I think that's partly because a lot of his leverage has gone. If you spoke to people in the last few months, they suspected that possibly his game plan was to try and defect to reform and take on a senior position like Shadow Chancellor, which would have required some particularly sort of deft handling of figures in reform that might otherwise want that role, like Richard Tice, the deputy leader, and Zia Youssef, who is the head of policy. And that was all because Robert Jenrick was such a prospective kind of catch for reform. He held such appeal, and he could potentially bring MPs with him to significantly bolster reform's parliamentary size in Parliament, which, let's not forget, sort of stands at about 5 so far. But now that he doesn't have that, and I understand that most of his MP allies are not planning to move with him, they've confirmed that directly to me, I suspect he's actually in a bit of a bind, figuring out what hand to play with Nigel Farage and how best to make it look as though if he does defect, he wasn't kicked out of the Conservative Party for exactly the right reasons, and Kemi Badenoch was completely right to suspect him all along.
I mean, Aubrey, this story isn't a shock. I mean, the rumours have been around in Westminster for a long time, and only a few months ago when Robert Jenrick was asked this question about defecting, he said, no, I joined the Conservative Party when I was 16 years of age. I want to help turn the Conservative Party around and get us back into government. That's just only a few months ago. So the fact that he has defected now, but his hand is weakened, as you said, by the fact that this has all exploded. I suspect he was waiting until the May elections.
Yeah, certainly. So some of his allies said to me today it's complete nonsense that he was planning to defect because he wanted to stand and be leader of the Conservative Party in future. They saw that window of opportunity emerging after the locals in May, obviously the Scottish and Welsh elections as well. So that was really the moment of opportunity that Jenrick's allies saw to potentially try and oust Kemi Badenoch. What the Tory leader's done now quite successfully is remove that route. She's taken not only the whip off him, but the membership of the party off him as well. And it means that she now can't be challenged. So she's looking around, and some of her allies are saying she's safe for the foreseeable now. There is no other big beast that is trying to agitate against her, which means that she has a clear enough path to the next general election.
And
but Robert Jenrick's allies are certainly spurned as well.
Yet isn't part of this story that was the case already? She had the ability to sack Robert Jenrick because Robert Jenrick was planning a defection, because he didn't see a path for him to oust Kemi Badenoch as being a particularly credible one, particularly after the budget response, after the relatively successful Conservative Party conference. Kemi Badenoch was looking more secure than perhaps she has ever looked as leader of the Conservative Party, and this could be why he decided to jump.
Quite possibly, yeah, because he saw that window of opportunity moving away, and obviously we still haven't had it confirmed that he is going to go, but that's the sort of seems to be like he's maybe trying to figure out his best political solution right now. I was reporting back in October how Kemi Badenoch had quite unusually got really into her stride by telling off Robert Jenrick and another shadow frontbencher in shadow cabinets for effectively going off message, and that was one of the first signs I really saw of the Tory leader getting into her own stride and feeling confident enough not only in her own skills but in her position to discipline and put other people in their place, particularly one as sort of potentially precarious in terms of her position as Robert Jenrick.
OK, well, Aubrey Allegretti, thanks indeed for talking through this breaking news story. We've still got the popcorn out. We'll be watching all afternoon. What might happen? Well, it's the one and only Martin Daubney who's going to take you through.
You don't want to miss it. Popcorn.
Absolutely. Yum.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The rain continuing to fall into this evening, but it should ease overnight, and that'll allow things to turn quite cold in places with the risk of ice, and there'll be some thick fog patches too. It's this little area of low pressure that's bringing the rain, focused across the Midlands and eastern England in particular through this evening. It is pulling away, but still a lot of spray, a lot of surface water out on the roads there. The Met Office yellow warning in place for a few more hours before it all heads into the North Sea. A few showers then coming into Wales, southwest England, some for eastern parts of Northern Ireland, later in the night into southwest Scotland. But many other areas will be dry overnight, turning cold and frosty across Scotland and Northern England. And as I said, that generates the risk of ice, but also we're likely to see some fog patches around for Friday morning's commute. A frosty start across much of northern Scotland, where there's snow lying on the ground. Temperatures maybe as low as -5, -6 in places. Some showers coming into southwest Scotland and times into the east of Northern Ireland, the far northwest of England too. And there will be some showers around the coast